An entitled Karen refuses to pay me for the site I built for her, literally screwing me out of thousands of dollars, all because she wanted to keep all the money for herself. So I decided to get some revenge by pretending to be the hacker that took down her website very recently, resulting in her paying me what she owes me for the work I did for her website, as she assumed that I was the hacker that took down her site, despite the fact that I definitely wasn't. Here's what happened. Okay, so this is basically about a freelance revenge story that happened about 8 years ago, and it was one of the first times I was ghosted without paying. Now, for a bit of context, I created a landing page for this lady that would promote her elven symbol jewelry store. It was a bunch of esoteric BS, but I was young and trying to break into copywriting, so I took any deal that I could. We agreed on a pure performance deal. So I got nothing up front, but we settled on a 5% performance fee. Her WordPress store was really small, and I was aiming to get about $800 out of it. But honestly, at some level, I would have been happy to just do it for practice and for my portfolio. Well, long story short, I wrote the landing page and I built it inside of her WordPress site. She started running some Facebook ads on it, and I was shocked to see that it was actually converting. On day 1, she got $120. On day 2, $200. On day 3, she got $150. And on day 4, $360. And this kept going and going. And by the end of the month, that landing page brought in about $6,000 in revenue. And I honestly thought that I struck gold. $300 in royalty in the first month? Like, are you kidding me? I was going to make bank from like 2 days of work. Well, predictably, she disappeared the moment I mentioned first invoice. 3 months go by and I get nothing. No replies to emails and calls go unanswered. She's still running ads. I mean, I can see all the sales coming in because I still have access to her website. Then out of nowhere, I get a panic message. My site is down. Are you doing this? Please stop. Now, for the record, I had nothing to do with her store going down. Probably just her cheap hosting. But after being ghosted for months while she made thousands off of my work, I knew this could be my one and only shot at getting paid. So you know what? I just played along. But I had to be careful. I couldn't just admit in writing that I'm the hacker and threaten her to pay up. Like, what if she went to the police and showed them the messages? No, I had to make her think that I was, but not admit to anything at the same time. So I replied. I said to her, sorry, but I'm not going to pay you until you pay me what you owe me. Well, this turned out to be the perfect level of vague. I never said that I hacked her site. I never threatened to keep it down. And instead, I just looked really suspicious. She then immediately called me and asked me what I want. I told her I still have access to her website and Google Analytics. I can see what she made off the landing page and I want what we agreed on. 5% of sales from that landing page. Well, it ended up being just shy of $1,500. After that, she then said she'll take care of it. We got off the call and I sent her the final invoice. And right then, she wired the money immediately. She then messaged me with a payment confirmation from her bank and asked me to enable her website. So in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, it worked. I was shaking when I typed back, but I replied by saying, I had nothing to do with your website crashing. You should talk to your hosting provider. After that, I never heard from her again, but I'm honestly just so glad that I ended up getting paid. Dude, I love this so much. This is like the best kind of revenge you ever want to get because this Karen deserved this. The second anybody doesn't pay someone for their work on time, that for me marks you as a bad person right then and there. Like across the board, you're a garbage human being if you don't pay people for their work. Whether that's building out a website or lawn care or whatever it is. Just pay people what you promised them, seriously. And you agreed to give basically the original poster some royalties, so you gotta do that. So seriously, good for the original poster for tricking them into paying you. That is a brilliant way to get your money back. Because chances are this Karen probably wasn't even paying for hosting or something like that. Because based on their history, I wouldn't be surprised if they were skimping on all of that from the very beginning. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My idiotic supervisor says that if I'm even 5 minutes late to work, then I should not even bother showing up in the first place. So I decided to maliciously comply, eventually leading to this guy looking like a complete moron. Here's how it went down. Okay, I used to have this super chill supervisor who understood that traffic happens, life happens, as long as we get the work done. Then we got a new guy who was the corporate type and obsessed with punctuality culture. Well, the first week he calls me into his office. He says to me, "You've been 5 to 10 minutes late a few times. That won't fly anymore. If you're late again, don't even bother coming in at all." I then asked if we could talk about adjusting my shift slightly, as I work late most days anyway. He then cuts me off and says, "We have to maintain standards, no exceptions." So I thought to myself, okay then. Next Monday I hit traffic and the GPS says I'll be 12 minutes late. So I just didn't go in. I took the day and I sent an email to him. "I'm just following your guidance. Late again, so I won't be coming in." Well, I didn't get a reply. Fast forward and I did the same thing again on Thursday. It was the same deal with a light traffic delay and I decided to stay home. Human Resources finally emails me like, "Are you planning to return to work?" And I forwarded them his exact words with no no edits. Suddenly, there's a clarification meeting, and apparently the policy was miscommunicated. I was then welcomed back, and minor delays will now be handled with understanding, because I guess at the end of the day, he didn't expect me to follow his instructions that well, which led to him looking like a complete moron. I love this so much because my god, I can't stand managers like this. They're idiotic, they're super obsessive, and they make everybody else's lives a complete nightmare. So good for you for sticking it to this guy in a way that he will truly never forget. An entitled customer mouths off at my assistant manager, treating him like garbage in a way that was truly unacceptable. So my assistant manager got revenge by humiliating them in a way that they are truly not expecting. Here's how it went down. So this was from many years ago when I was a retail salesperson in a jewelry store in a shopping mall. This really did happen, and it's one of my favorite memories. Our assistant manager, who we'll call Jerry for the sake of the story, sold a really fancy crystal set to a couple who was going to give it as a wedding gift. I was within earshot during most of the transaction, which took a long time and featured the husband being a jerk to Jerry the entire time. We're talking condescending, demanding, demeaning, pretty much the works. But Jerry was a total professional. He kept his cool and remained cheerful and obliging during all of the mistreatment he was receiving. At the end of the transaction, he asked them if they would like some complimentary gift wrapping. The customer agreed, and so Jerry took the box into the back room and did a spectacular wrapping job. He went all out with luxury ribbons, silver metallic textured paper, literally the works. So the customer left, Jerry smiled and then waved goodbye. When they were gone, he was still smiling, and I asked why he was so cheerful after that experience. Jerry said to me, "Oh, it's fine," and held up the price tag and smiled. The crystal set had cost around $150, which back in my day was about $500 in total. And while in the back room wrapping the gift, Jerry had removed the original price tag, but then stuck new ones on the bottom of each one, something like maybe $17 on each one, even going as low as $3. Then he wrapped them up all nice and pretty. He then said that the beauty of all of this is that they will never know, and then gave a satisfied laugh knowing that these people were about to look incredibly stupid. Oh man, I love this so much because you know for a fact they did not expect that the price is going to be on the bottom of it, let alone the wrong price, making them look incredibly cheap. Like the bride and groom eventually are going to be like, "Oh wow, look at these crystal glasses that we got. Wait a second, this is really cheap glass. What were they doing?" Whereas everybody else probably got them something like really fancy and worth their while. So seriously, good for Jerry. We need more Jerrys in the world, especially in the workforce, because customers like this absolutely deserve to get punished, especially if they're going to be condescending. Am I the jerk for leaving dinner with my parents early after they called my girlfriend disgusting for kissing me on the cheek? Because right now they're saying that I need to apologize for leaving early, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I've been a lurker here for a while, but I now have a situation that I need to know if I'm wrong about. I'm a 32-year-old female, and I've been dating my girlfriend, who I will call Ruby, for about 10 months now. She is 48 years old, and yes, I'm aware of our age gap. I'm a fully grown woman, I can make my own choices, and Ruby treats me really well. She's been the first in a long string of really awful exes to do so. She is honestly an absolute angel. Now, for some more context, my parents and I have never really been close, as they honestly just didn't really care about me as a kid. I was always being handed off to nannies and ignored when I tried to play with them. They would always leave me behind with said nannies when they went on business trips and vacations. And then when I got older, they would just leave me all alone. It was a terrible way to grow up, but I've moved on from it. I can't let my childhood define my entire life. And once I moved out, we rarely talk besides holidays and birthdays. Anyways, in the past couple of years, my parents have started reaching out more and trying to connect. I was a little weary at first, as I thought maybe they wanted something from me, but after feeling them out for a bit, I think they just feel bad for how they ignored me when I was young. I slowly started letting them into my life, and a few months ago, I told them about Ruby. They immediately jumped into telling me how I'm too young to be dating someone so old, and so on and so forth. But I shut that down immediately. I told them they don't get to say stuff like that to me ever. They can either support me after all the stuff they pulled, or they can go away. And you know what? That seemed to shut them up. Fast forward to last night, where me, Ruby, and my parents all had dinner together. It was their first time meeting her, and it was going smoothly up until Ruby gave me a peck on the lips before going to the bathroom. The second she was out of earshot, my mom just blurted out something like, "Oh, Ruby just absolutely disgusts us. She is disgusting." Now, I didn't say anything, but I was just so stunned as they both started to explain that they can't accept this relationship or some other BS like that. I mean, I barely remember. All I could hear was static. I was so pissed off. I flagged down our waitress, told my parents that we were leaving, and I paid the bill as we all sat in awkward silence. And it's like, I guess they didn't want to embarrass themselves in front of the waitress. I don't even know. By then, Ruby was back and she was totally confused. I explained everything in the cab ride home, and honestly, I started tearing up a bit. I was finally starting to think I actually had parents, but then they go and say awful stuff like that. Ruby was pretty shocked and comforted me as best as she could. Now, my parents have been calling me and texting me, scolding me for leaving like that, and saying that they just want me to date date someone right for me. They even looped a couple aunts and uncles in who never even really give a crap about me in the first place and have them telling me to answer my parents and apologize. So with all that in mind, I really just need to know, am I the jerk in this situation for walking out? Because right now I'm still incredibly upset. Okay, yeah, there's no way you're at fault here. This is so unbelievably disgusting, the fact that your parents did this to you. Because honestly, your girlfriend didn't do anything wrong. She literally just kissed you on the cheek before she went to the bathroom. So no, you're not the jerk because the way they're treating you is completely out of line. A group of entitled jerks decide to be way too loud at a graduation ceremony for my daughter. So me and my family decided to get some revenge on them by literally returning the favor and ruining their experience as well. Here's how we did it. So I was at a college graduation yesterday with two sons to watch our daughter graduate. There were two young women behind us in the bleachers, and they were talking nonstop and not quietly. I turned around and I asked them nicely if they could be quieter so we could actually hear the speakers, and this was before the actual announcement of names and degrees. And one of the women behind us said something like, "Oh, they're just talking for now. It's not even the graduation, so we can talk as much as we want to." Well, needless to say, they did not quiet down, and I believe they stepped it up just to annoy me. During their loud conversations, we learned the first name of their brother, who we will call Ray for the sake of the story, and with a quick glance of the program, we located the only graduate named Ray, as well as the name of the graduate to be announced before him. My sons were texting, including me, and they plotted their revenge, all silently via texting back and forth, especially once we learned they were going to record their brother's walk. One of the women behind us was readying her phone to record the announcement of her brother's name and his walk across the stage to shake hands with a couple of dignitaries. When they announced the person before Ray, all three of us stood up, waving our arms and screaming as loudly as we could. And you know what? We continued during that person's announcement and then during Ray's. She then replayed it on her phone, but all you could hear once we started yelling was our yells. No Ray announcement at all, nor did she capture video of him walking across the stage. We had blocked that out by standing and waving. Now, we learned this from her comments during a couple replays on her phone behind us, and some choice words along with it. Now, thankfully, my wife was seated in the front row of the stage and she recorded our daughter's walk, so these idiots had no chance to get even. Yeah, seriously, when you're at a graduation, there's no reason to act like that. Like, just be quiet and wait your turn. You're literally just trying to watch someone graduate. Like, this is a big deal. You don't want to miss it, and you don't want someone talking the entire time. So honestly, this level of revenge kind of makes sense to me, and I think I would have done the same thing, especially if the people behind me were being obnoxious like the people in this story. My manager changed an annoying policy that mostly affects me, so I decided to maliciously comply, effectively showing him how dumb it truly is. Here's how it went down. Okay, so this happened mid-2022. I was hired almost fully remotely at my current job as a systems engineer, and this was agreed upon by human resources and the hiring director. Part of my job is on-site data center support. For months, I didn't have to do anything because nothing really came up, but as time went on, I did more data center work, which is not a big deal because two of them are close to me by car. Fast forward to October of 2023, and due to client requirements, daily IDF and MDF checks were required again. It was split up amongst all the engineering teams, with me being the lucky one to having to do it on Mondays. My main coworker, who's now my team lead, was over an hour away because the train to his area was down, but with the express train and bus, I could get there in about an hour. During the meeting, the manager stated to me, "You don't have to stay in the office all day. This was approved by the director and you could just go in, do the checks, and leave when you want." So I think to myself, great. I would go in, sign into work while on the train and bus, do the checks and anything else I might need to do, and then go straight home. And this went on for well over a year. Well, a couple of months ago, my manager stated that if we go in, we have to stay in for the rest of the day. And he didn't even have the audacity to tell us. My manager lead had to tell us during a meeting, and he thought it was complete BS as well. I don't know the reasoning, but it's such a waste of time and worse for my work. But then I realized I could go in later in the day and then leave when I sign off for work at 3:30 p.m. Now I leave for the 12:30 p.m. train to get to the office by 2, because it's a 90-minute commute. I do the checks and anything else that might need to be done, and then I leave by 3:30. One afternoon, my manager calls me and I mentioned that I was on the train. He then asked me, "Okay, did you start late today?" And I responded by saying, "No, I'm just going to the office for the checks like every Monday." Well, he didn't respond, knowing that I am still technically listening to his stupid requirement. My team lead laughed when I told him that, because honestly, this policy was incredibly stupid. Okay, I've said it once and I'll say it again, I can't stand managers who make up policies that don't make any sense. And this story is a fantastic example of that. Like literally, they're just wasting the original poster's time. So good for you for maliciously complying in this story, because your manager really needed to have it illustrated that what they're expecting you to do is incredibly stupid. Am I the jerk for kicking a family out of our condominium pool just because they don't live here and they literally are not residents of our condominium? Because right now I kind of feel bad and I'm not sure if I made a big mistake. Here's how it went down. Okay, so I was enjoying my coffee poolside at our condominium on a Sunday morning. A mother and her 2 kids arrived who were clearly not residents because they drove up with all of their pool stuff in their car and changed into their bathing suits in the bathroom. A resident, on the other hand, would just walk here, as the association isn't that big, and would have changed in their own unit. It's been almost 100 degrees for a week. The kids jumped in the pool and started splashing around, having a great time. And yeah, they were noisy, but they were just being kids. I started thinking about what if all the kids from the surrounding apartment buildings started using our pool. Well, it's at this moment I might be the jerk, because I pointed out the sign that said residents only, and I then made them leave. Because at the end of the day, they weren't really harming anything. The kids were so disappointed that I made them leave that they started crying. It has been so hot that I'm sure being in the pool was a great relief. But if I'm being completely honest, we pay for the pool. Plus, if they got injured, they would sue the condo association. If word got out that anyone can swim in our pool, then anyone would. So truly, am I the jerk in this situation? Because honestly, I feel like I made a mistake. So in my opinion, I don't think you're totally the jerk, but I don't think this is something you should ever try to police ever again. And instead, I would report this to the association in charge of that place. I totally get where you're coming from. It is residents only, and you don't want anybody showing up and swimming in the pool, especially if you've got skin in the game where you're like, look, I pay for it. This is something I literally put my money into to make sure it's maintained. I can understand that aspect of it, but I also think this is something someone else should handle. So no, you're not the jerk for kicking them out, but also this should never have to come from you ever again. An entitled Karen neighbor decided to leave a note on my car, even though I parked my car legally on the street in front of her house, as she claimed that I had no right to do so and that I was blocking traffic, even though I definitely wasn't. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I got a note on my car that said something absolutely ridiculous. It said the following: please consider when you have no intention of going out for so far 3 days. By parking like this, you make it incredibly difficult for people to turn around. Our elderly relatives visit me on the weekend, and they were unable to park outside of our house. Please be considerate as you don't even live down this road. So after getting this message, I went and I talked to the lady and I explained. I said to her that I lived around the corner on the walkway attached to the road, and that there was plenty of space for turning, at least a car and a half wide. I also told her I got sick and was in bed with a vomit virus for 2 days. I said that she has space on her driveway for 2 cars if she backs one up into the garage, but apparently none of that mattered to her. It's just too much to be parking on the public road in front of someone's houses on the weekend. Also, apparently it's my fault for choosing to live in a house on a walkway and no driveway. She didn't seem to like when I informed her that I didn't have much of a choice in what house my parents bought before I was born. I honestly just went to talk to her, assuming it was a case of some kind of misunderstanding. If she was polite to me, I would have offered to give her a way to contact me to move my car next time if I could. But entitled Karens like this think they own the public road, so instead, this entitled Karen gets absolutely nothing from me. Yeah, people like this are so weird. You can literally park wherever you want. It's a public road. So yeah, that Karen was completely out of line, and honestly, I hope you park in front of her house some more, because you literally have every right to do so. My entitled sister hosted a beach trip for the entire family, but after I told her that she couldn't have my favorite swimsuit, she freaked out and left early, refusing to pay for a large portion of the bill, leaving the rest of us stuck having to pay off the balance. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened really recently. My sister, who we will call Jay, and her husband organized and fully sponsored a 2-day family beach trip as their treat before flying back to the United Kingdom. Day 1 was perfect. It was amazing. Everyone was vibing and super chill. There was great food and lots of laughs. It's the kind of day where you wish you could bottle it up, where everyone is enjoying the time together. But then day 2 came around. Jay woke up in a good mood, same as everybody else. And then a few hours in, all of us sisters decided to go swimming. Now, before the trip, Jay asked if she could borrow her favorite swimsuit of mine. I forgot to pack that one, but I did bring an extra and I offered it to her. And she said that was totally fine until she saw the new swimsuit I was wearing, and suddenly she wanted that one instead. Well, I told her no, because she already had the extra suit that I bought for her, and she had been okay with it. I thought it was no big deal, so I went outside to take some pictures. Well, not long after, our older sister told me that Jay and her husband were suddenly leaving early. Now, what's the reason, you might be wondering? They said that they had to prepare their things for the United Kingdom trip, which was really weird because that definitely wasn't the plan. They even brought our brother and cousin with them since they all came in the same car, so it kind of messed up a lot for the rest of us. But here's the real kicker. They left us with a huge chunk of the resort bill unpaid. plus the car gas expenses that were originally covered by them. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, well, so much for our treat. Clearly that was not the case. So yeah, what started as a sweet farewell trip turned into a passive-aggressive exit, all because I wouldn't give up my swimsuit. And at the end of it, it ended with a surprise bill, which for me just proves once and for all that my sister is super entitled, because this behavior is completely uncalled for. Oh man, talk about a one-way trip to never trusting your sister ever again. Because if she could do this once, my god, she could absolutely do this again in a heartbeat. What in the world was she thinking, dude? She literally planned a 2-day trip with a family, didn't get what she wanted with one single swimsuit, and was like, okay, I'm gonna leave you with some bills to pay for. This is no longer my treat. I need to get ready for the United Kingdom. It's like, what are you talking about? That is absolutely crazy talk. Like, I know for a fact I would never trust them in any capacity ever again. She would get put on that secret list that pretty much all of us have, like, let's be honest. And it's a list of people where we're like, okay, these people cannot be trusted. You can't give them any information, and there's no way you can give them money. Because that's where the sister belongs. She belongs like right in the middle of that list, because this is unbelievable behavior. She has betrayed the entire family, and that is honestly an understatement. An entitled group of people dine and dash at a restaurant, leaving a pregnant woman with a bill of over $1,000 in steaks, desserts, and drinks. Things got so bad that this pregnant woman actually had to have an ambulance called for her, as she was having a literal meltdown. Here's what happened. Okay, so we were having dinner last Sunday night for my niece's birthday at a very nice steakhouse, and the table next to us was having a huge party. I mean, I counted at least 36 people sat around a whole stack of tables all pushed together. Now, the night went on and we had a lovely dinner, and noticed that the people at the big table were drifting off in small groups, which is honestly nothing unusual. Well, as we were finishing up, there was a lady screaming and crying at the register at the front. She was a heavily pregnant woman, and she was having an absolute meltdown. Now, we got the conversation from a waiter a little bit later, and it turns out that everyone who left prior to her had told her that they would pay for their meals and drinks separately on the way out. And as I'm from Australia, this is very common to split the bill like that. Well, they then apparently told the cashier that they'd given their portion of the bill to a friend who would pay at the end of the night. And this was supposed to all be good, except they did neither of those things. The pregnant woman got to the cashier at the end of the night and was then presented with a bill for several thousands of dollars for steaks, desserts, and drinks. And it was right at this moment that she had a meltdown. This lady was in such a state that the manager called an ambulance for her. When we left, her partner was screaming down the phone at someone to get their stupid butts back to the restaurant and pay for their bill, or they would never see him or their baby ever again. And honestly, I was so sad for them. It looked like a bunch of close friends and family having a celebration night out. I mean, who would do something like that to someone they care about? Seriously, what did they think was going to happen? Did they really think the couple would just suck it up and pay for it? I'm honestly still in shock that these people did this, and I really hope that all of this got worked out in some kind of way. Wow, talk about having awful friends and family. Seriously, they left a pregnant woman to pay for all this stuff and just all slowly trickled out of the restaurant in some kind of hopes of, like, I don't know, dining and dashing. Like, that is seriously messed up. That is so crazy to me. You would think that people would have some kind of backbone and actually pay for their meal, but instead they pull a fast one on this poor lady and her husband and basically try to say, oh yeah, she's gonna take care of it. That is crazy to me, and I've never heard of anything like that happening before, especially not a giant group like this. Like, in some kind of twisted universe, I can imagine some of them doing that, but not all of them. Seriously, what, 34 people decided, oh yeah, we're gonna get out of here and leave them with the bill? Like, that's crazy to me. There is no excuse for that, because this pregnant woman and her husband did not deserve this. And I don't know about you, but if that was me, I would not have thousands of dollars at the ready to pay for all this stuff. So hopefully there is some kind of good ending to this, because what happened to this lady is absolutely atrocious. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my dad that he made his own mess and that I am not going to help him with it? Because right now the whole family is falling apart and it is quite literally his fault. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my dad is a complete mess up. He and my mom were together for 7 years and they were high school sweethearts and everything, and my mom eventually found out that she was pregnant with me. He says he freaked out and cheated on her because he was scared of being a father, but he regretted it after the 3rd time of sleeping with this other woman and thought that he could leave it behind. He then proposed to my mom and she accepted. Then when my mom was 7 months pregnant with me, the other woman showed up and said dad got her pregnant. And it was then that my mom called off the engagement. And from that mess, my dad has me, an 18-year-old male, and my 17-year-old sister, who we will call Stacy. Stacy is is not her real name. The other woman wanted a relationship with Dad, but he said he only ever loved and wanted my mom. She was a mistake and the baby was a mistake. Mom didn't want him back, and Dad ended up getting 50-50 custody of me and Stacy. Her mom tried for maybe 2 years, and it sounds like to get back with Dad, and even told my mom she was selfish for keeping Dad from her. But then she gave up. Dad pined for Mom for years and tried to win her back, and it really pissed Stacy off because her mom was basically saying that her dad chose Mom and me over them. So she basically had a chip on her shoulder with me and my mom. Now, when she was way too young to be saying stuff like this, she started calling me and my mom degrading insults. And my dad would get so mad when Stacy talked to Mom that way, and Dad would just tell Mom that he was sorry and that he'd make it work, while also desperately proclaiming his love for her. And this was all going on when I was old enough to remember witnessing this pathetic mess. I was 11 years old when Dad moved on and finally let Mom go. He met a woman and got married to her, which then brought about my 6-year-old sister, who we will call Georgie. Well, Stacy was furious that Dad fell in love with someone else other than her mom, that instead of falling in love with her mom again, he found someone else after letting go of Mom after 11 years. So Stacy hates Georgie and she treats her like garbage. My dad's wife passed away when Georgie was only 3, and Stacy has said some pretty twisted stuff about her to Georgie, and she's also said it to me because I got along with my dad's late wife. Now, I have mostly stayed out of all of this all the way until now, but I answer occasional calls from my dad. He said he wanted to get the family together when we talked yesterday, and that he wants us to be close again, that he needs my help to do it, and that he can't continue with this toxic mess. Well, I told him he made his own mess and I'm not helping him with it, that he needs to take accountability and stop making it worse. My dad then told me that I should care about my sisters and how we'll never be close if this continues, but I told him that it was not my fault. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation for trying to stay out of it? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk, but your dad absolutely is. This guy has children from like 3 different moms. He has literally never been consistent with anybody, and he just constantly keeps messing up and is now trying to get you to help him fix it. And I personally think under any other circumstance, this might be something you're willing to like entertain in the slightest. But the fact that he's basically trying to guilt trip you into taking care of it by saying, oh, you should be sisters, we'll never be close if you don't fix it. It's like, wait a second, I'm not the reason this all went down like this. This quite literally stems back to him cheating on your mom. Like, this is literally not your problem, and the fact that you're 18, in my opinion, is like the best thing about this, because you can absolutely choose where you want to live. And if you're able to, you can move out and move on with your life. Because in my opinion, I really do think your dad failed in many ways, and that failure is something that he needs to address and not you. I feel that my girlfriend is taking advantage of me financially, as she is constantly and consistently making me pay for everything around the house, simply because I make more money than her. And now, as a result, I'm rethinking my entire relationship, because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old male, and I'm in my first year of being a corporate lawyer in New York City, where I make about $250,000 per year, and I work from 60 to 70 hours per week. I'm a first-generation Taiwanese American, and my parents are engineers, and with their help, I am currently debt-free. I live with my 24-year-old girlfriend, who I met about 2 years ago when I was in law school, and who currently works at a nonprofit near me, where she has an entry-level job making about $60,000 a year. Anyways, she has been living with me for about a year now, and while initially it went well, I'm now having some issues. I pay the entire $5,100 rent and utilities for our very small one-bedroom apartment, and she insists that I pay for virtually everything else as well because she makes less. And she also pays for some things for herself, but it's stuff like groceries or her going out with her friends. We had conversations about money early on, and I agreed that I would pay for rent and utilities and for our dates, essentially because for starters, I like doing it. Also, I make more money, and she agreed that she would spend more quality time with me whenever I want, if you know what I mean. So while it was going great for like 8 months, the situation has been getting out of hand recently. She basically insists that I take her out for expensive dinners to trendy places that she finds on TikTok at least twice a week. She asks for makeup and clothing and kitchen and home things, and while I suppose I can't afford it, I'm not saving or investing as much as I want. When I try to confront her, she just argues very passionately, saying that we have an arrangement and that she doesn't want to be with a cheap guy and just sort of exhaust my energy. Beyond that, I'm conflicted. I really like this girl, and she seems very serious about this relationship. She's very family-oriented, her degree is in adolescent psychology, she wants to teach and have kids and all this other good stuff, but I feel like she's only with me because I have a well-paying job, and she has this idea of getting married to a rich guy. I know a lot of senior male firm partners and finance guys in New York City who have stay-at-home wives and it does work for them. And I honestly like this scenario. But the reality is that I can't afford to do it now. I need to save up for a nest egg for a few years and live frugally in case my career doesn't go where I want it to. How do I deal with this situation? Should I stay with her or is this kind of a lost cause? What should I do? Okay, for starters, this does not sound like one of those situations where the wife is a stay-at-home mom and she takes care of the house. If anything, it seems like you've set up a very sketchy deal between the two of you and now you're realizing this is not working out in your favor. Especially that third point you made, which I'm not going to elaborate on, but it definitely sounds super sketchy. So in my opinion, yes, I do think she's taking advantage of you financially, but also you're definitely at fault for basically handing it to her. And I have to disagree with you on some of your points because you're saying, oh yeah, she's family oriented and she's a good girlfriend and she wants to have kids. But if you really think this is going to get better all of a sudden just because you have a family and make things official, then in my opinion, I think you're out of your mind delusional. Because then everything you're talking about is going to be permanent. She will absolutely stick around and then there's nothing you can do about it. This might just be the tip of the iceberg because you are spending a lot of money already. So yes, your girlfriend is absolutely taking advantage of you and all of your money, but also you are doing nothing to fix your situation. And in my opinion, nothing's gonna get any better unless some kind of change happens. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that her new boyfriend can't bring his child to my wedding, as I made it very clear 2 years ago that my wedding was going to be child-free? Because right now she is calling me a massive jerk and she is very angry that I've refused to give in to her demands. Here's what happened. I'm a 33-year-old female and I'm getting married in November of 2024, which has been planned for the last 2 years. My sister, who's 36 years old, has just split up with her husband and has started a new relationship with one of her colleagues. For the sake of the story, we'll call him Brandon. And this is someone who I've briefly met a couple of times before, but I don't know them very well. He's nice enough, but my future husband has never met him, and like I say, I don't really know him myself. My sister mentioned to Brandon that she is my maid of honor and that I will be getting married in November within the first week of their new relationship. Before my sister and her husband split up, and for the sake of the story, we'll call him Ryan, that's not his real name, they were both invited to the wedding, and they'd been married for 15 years, so Ryan was a big part of the family. Well, Brandon automatically assumed he was invited to the wedding in Ryan's place, which I did not like, but sort of accepted that she'd won a +1. And Ryan would not want to come now anyways given the situation, so I just let it go. Well, she then informs me that Brandon told his daughter, who we will call Kelly, who he co-parents with his ex, that they're both coming to my wedding, so Kelly is really excited. Now for reference, Kelly is 10 years old, so I had to remind my sister that we are having a child-free wedding, which was communicated to everyone who was invited to attend. As we ourselves don't have children and we don't want children, so we didn't want children at our wedding, which all of our family and friends have been fine with. Now, I've met Kelly and she is a complete and spoiled brat, and definitely not a child that we would want at our wedding, regardless of if we were having a child-free wedding or not. Now, my sister thought our refusal was down to the cost of adding her as a guest when we've already reached the maximum numbers, so it was initially offered to pay for her place. But I told her it's not about the money, but instead, firstly, it's because I don't like Kelly, and secondly, Brandon overstepped by assuming his child could come to my wedding without even trying to talk to myself or my husband first. I also calmly told her that she knew we were having a child-free wedding and should have told him straight away to avoid this happening, since it's also not fair to our friends and family members who have arranged childcare for their own children to respect our wishes. Well, she's now calling me a jerk because according to her, it's going to make things very difficult for her when she has to tell him that he can't bring Kelly as she's excited about going to a wedding. But I told her that wasn't my problem, as I am not responsible for him trying to muscle in on a family event that he literally wasn't even invited to in the first place. I've offered to talk to him for her just to try and keep the peace, but she said I would just end up being more of a jerk to him than I already am for telling her that her new boyfriend's child can't come to my wedding. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I do not think you're the jerk at all, because I'm pretty sure your sister knew about this well in advance just like everybody else. She knew along with the rest of the family that no child is going to be attending this wedding. So I'm assuming you spelled this out very clearly, and there literally is no excuse for her to be like, oh, well, this is just not fair, which is such a stupid thing to say because she has known about this for 2 years. And there is no way this is some kind of surprise for your sister. She absolutely knew that you guys were having a child-free wedding, and she knew for a fact this was a feature of what you guys were doing. So for her to falsely claim that, oh wow, you're just gonna ruin everything, you're such a jerk for doing this. It's like, where was this talk like 2 years ago before you put your foot in your mouth? So no, you're not the jerk at all, and I think your sister is in the wrong for not correcting this much sooner, because any backlash that she experiences, in my opinion, is quite literally her own fault. Am I the jerk for reminding my ex-husband that I'm only responsible for our children and not all of his kids? Here's what happened. Okay, so my ex-husband and I have 2 kids together. We divorced about 10 years ago now because I feel like he regressed as a husband and a father during my second pregnancy, and he was even worse when our younger son was born. He was acting like a high school or college kid, or a simple 20-something-year-old with no kids, despite the fact that he's 40 and I'm 35. He spent more time with his friends than with us, and his friends were also treating me more like his mom and expecting me to pick him up from their houses when they needed to get on with stuff. We fought for 50-50 custody of our kids, which he was given, and for the first 2 or 3 years, he had every other weekend and a 2-week period during the summer with them, as well as alternating holidays. He started to be more involved, and eventually he got 50% custody. And it was at that time that I found out he got some woman pregnant, and he realized that with 3 kids, he needed to get his act together. He ended up with full custody of his 3rd child, and then he met his wife. They have 2 more children together now, and there are 2 kids in her life, but I don't believe they are her biological children, who she is also partially supporting. Those 2 kids don't live with them, but apparently the both of them pay for stuff for this child. Now, my ex and I started getting along better, but then his marriage was really rocky. As his marriage got worse, he started treating me like a co-parent to all of his kids. He would bring his other children to custody exchanges and was expecting interactions between me and his other children. Then it was requests to babysit for him and his wife, which of course I never did. Then it was comments about our boys' clothing at my house being sent to his house for his other kids and how we needed to make sure that they had adequate clothing. Well, I told him that there was no we in that situation, and he said, of course there is, we're co-parents. But I said, for our 2, sure, but not for the other kids. It was then requested for me to have his children in my home or to take them out to eat with me and our kids. And finally, it has turned into back-to-school craziness. I bought supplies for the boys, and he told me I didn't buy nearly enough stuff for everybody. And I was like, okay, hold on, what's that supposed to mean? He then pointed out that what I bought wouldn't be possible to share evenly between all 5 children. But I told him straight up, we don't have 5 children. We have only 2. And it's only the 2 kids that I bought that stuff for. I told him I'm responsible for our children and not his 3 other ones. I told him that he has a wife and they share 2 of those children and the other is in their home, so it is completely up to them. He told me that I know they don't have a lot of money, and I cut him off and I told him that still didn't make his children my problem. He said I can't possibly take care of just 2 of them, not when we're co-parenting and all 5 kids live together 50% of the time. He said that I should be part of the community to help raise these kids, and that keeping my distance like I do is so cold. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, of course you're not the jerk. Your ex-husband is an idiot, and the fact that he's trying to drag you into his mess, in my opinion, is like the greatest icing on this cake you could ever ask for. It's legitimate, obvious proof that this guy messed around and absolutely found out what was going to happen when he becomes a father when he's basically not ready for that. For him to somehow try to include you in taking care of these kids that are not yours, while also asking you to buy more school supplies and babysit those kids, that is crazy to me. You are completely justified in telling him, no, I'm not taking care of those kids. Those are not my kids and I'm only taking care of mine. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because the way your ex-husband is acting is truly insane. Am I the jerk for telling my mother that she is not a first-time mom now that she had a new baby? Because after growing up with my grandparents raising me, as my mom was way too young to have a kid herself at 16 years old, I now feel incredibly offended by her remarks. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old male, and I have a good relationship with my mother who's 40 years old, even though, as you can tell from our age, she had me when she was very young and obviously lacked the maturity to raise me. So I live with my grandparents, who were then below the poverty line, for most of my childhood while my mother moved away to get her college education. Now, I don't blame her for her choices. I know that she worked hard to improve herself and to get to a place where she would have the means to raise me right, but it just wasn't until I was 11 or 12 that she was stable enough to get me to live with her. And for reference, my biological dad was never in the picture. Anyways, now my mother is financially comfortable and she is happily married, and she gave birth to her second son a couple of weeks ago. I don't live with her anymore. I mean, we're not in the same city and it is a 2-hour drive away from each other, so it wasn't until yesterday that I managed to visit her and see my half-brother for the first time. I then noticed that she was surrounded by a lot of fancy accessories, so I was like, wait, what are those? And she was like, that's the baby's Lexus Lexus stroller and Louis Vuitton diaper bag, of course. So I said something like, "You really went overboard, didn't you?" And then she said something that really hurt my feelings. She said she now had the chance to experience motherhood for the first time and that she was feeling like a first-time mom because when she had me, she was so young and unprepared and financially vulnerable. So I told her straight up that she was not a first-time mom and that I couldn't understand why she would even say something like that to me. She then tried to argue that she didn't mean it like that, but I was still very much upset, and I just didn't push it because my stepfather arrived. She then texted me after I left, but I didn't reply yet. I also didn't pick up when she tried to call me, and honestly, it's kind of bothering me. So am I the jerk for holding on to this in the way that I have? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk for getting upset about this, because what she just said is completely offensive. Like, if I grew up in the way that you did, where you were raised by your grandparents instead of your mother, and she was never involved in your life until you were, 12 years old? Like, I would be hurt as well. And also, I'm not obtuse, and I totally get that your mom definitely was way too young to raise you, but for her to turn around and be like, "Oh, I'm a new mother now," like, that really is hurtful, and I would be super offended if that happened to me. Because it's almost like she's just forgetting that the person she's talking to right now is literally the son that she never raised. Sure, she had you when you were 12 years old, but like, all those years beforehand was with your grandparents. And now you have a step-sibling who literally has all these expensive items and they're actually getting the care that you deserved. And you're literally missing out on that because your mom was completely irresponsible. It really is a tricky situation, and I'm so sorry that you're going through that. Because at the end of the day, that was a very insensitive thing to say. And even though she had you when she was 16 years old, she's now 40 years old, and she absolutely should have known better. And in my opinion, she definitely needs to apologize and try to make this situation right. An entitled Karen blatantly steals my shopping cart right from underneath me, despite the dozens of carts that she literally passed in order to grab mine. And even though I was obviously using the cart in question, this lady refused to take no for an answer. And I'm honestly blown away by this lady's entitlement, and I really hope that karma comes back to bite her where it counts. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened a few months ago, and for context, I'm a 29-year-old female, and I had just been in a pretty bad car accident back in April where I had partially wrapped my front end around a tree at 50 miles an hour. Fortunately, I came out mostly intact outside of a broken collarbone, as well as severe muscle strain in my legs. I had gone to the store with a friend, and I had decided that I no longer needed the scooter and wanted to start walking again. She parked as close to the store as she could, but I grossly overestimated the strength I had in my legs, as by the time I got in the store, I was practically using my friend as a crutch because my legs were trying to give out. Thankfully, there was a bench near the entrance inside where she deposited me. She asked if I was sure I didn't want a scooter, and me being stubborn said yes, I was sure. We weren't in any hurry to go anywhere, as we had no other plans, and we were mostly there just to chat with one of the door hosts, as they were a friend of ours. So the plan was to sit and rest my legs while we chatted and then go do our shopping. Now, my friend had gotten me a car to use for when we went shopping, but said she had to go to the bathroom and to wait for her to get back. Now, I was still chatting with our door host friend at the time, so I said that would be completely fine. Shortly after, it started to get busy, so I had to stop talking to the door host so they could do their job. Then I decided to start scrolling through my phone while I waited for my friend to get back. Now, it's important to note that I was leaning forward with my good arm on the side of the cart, as I did this to let people know that I was using it even though it was empty. And I also want to mention that the cart bay was completely full, and someone would also have to go past it in order to get to me. Trust me, this will be relevant later. Just as I was starting to wonder if my friend had fallen in and was just about to start texting her, a lady came up to my cart, and while I was leaning on it, started to put her child in the car seat. I said to her, "What do you think you're doing?" This Karen said to me, "What? You're not even using it." I said to her, "Yes, I am. I'm waiting on my friend in the bathroom." She then looks at me and says, "Well, I need it more than you do. Can't you see my baby's tired?" I then gestured over to the cart bay. I said to her, "There are a bunch of carts that you just passed in order to get to this one. Why didn't you just grab one of those like a normal person?" This entitled Karen looked at me and said, "Why can't you just grab one yourself and let me have this one? I don't have time for this. My baby's tired and you're being rude." So I said to her, "Okay, let's see. I'm just sitting here minding my own business while waiting for my friend, and a random lady is trying to get me to let her steal my cart. But apparently I'm the rude one? Yeah, somehow I doubt that." This Karen then looks at me and says, "Oh my god, why do kids your age always have to act so entitled? Didn't your parents teach you to respect your elders? I'm telling you to give me this cart right now. Now hand it over." She then actually tried to move it, but I had my foot on the cart so she couldn't get very far. I said to her, "I don't care how old old you are. And my parents taught me that respect is earned and not given. So take your kid out of my cart and get lost. You're not entitled to just take whatever you want simply because you're older. Go get your own cart. It was at this point that I stood up to yank my cart back, but that proved to be a mistake, as I almost fell into the cart due to my weak legs. Instincts told me to use both hands to catch myself on the cart, but that was also a bad idea due to my broken collarbone. All this to say that I made a very bad decision, and the amount of pain I was in afterwards made for a very vocal landing on the floor. My door host friend heard me yelp and came over to ask what had happened. The lady then told them that she was just walking by when I stopped her and tried to steal her cart. But the door host looked at her, then at me, and then back to this stupid Karen. The door host then said, I watched her friend give that cart to her when they came in, and she should be back any second now. The entitled Karen then said, but I have my kid, and this idiot is just faking whatever it is she has for attention. You need to make her get another one. And then off she went. No fanfare, no police called, no justice. Just me sitting on the floor trying not to cry from the amount of pain that I was in. My door host friend helped me back up and onto the bench and got me another cart just as my friend came back. When I told her what happened, she was pissed, but ultimately agreed there wasn't anything we could do as this entitled Karen was long gone by then. And after that interaction, I definitely ended up needing that scooter after all. Wow, that Karen is absolutely out of line. Seriously, there's a cart bay full of shopping carts that she could have used, but instead of taking one of those, she grabbed the one that someone was leaning on and being like, oh, I'm gonna take it. Like, is she really that entitled that she has to act like a complete moron in public? And sure, this story doesn't have like this stellar ending that everybody would like really hope for, but honestly, that's just life. Sometimes awful people get away with stupid things, and they mistreat people like the original poster here, and then they scamper off back into the darkness looking for their next victim. So to the original poster, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that, and hopefully that entitled Karen gets exactly what's coming to her. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today, I messed up by fabricating my job experience and eventually getting a senior level job that I definitely shouldn't have. And now, after trying to run this job for just a little bit, I'm realizing that I'm definitely unqualified for this high stress position, because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I've realized that I am completely screwed. To rewind for a bit of context, I've got a pretty decent career history, education, and work experience for being in my early 30s, but I put a lot of effort into over-accentuating that experience when applying for jobs a few months ago, and I found my way into a vice president of sales position for a mid-sized company after a long interview process that I never thought I'd actually get. I'm also quite certain that they think I'm older than I actually am, but never asked other than the sterling background check. To start things out, I have a dual degree from a well-known school and a master's degree from another very highly ranked school, on top of some professional experience throughout that time in school, mostly working full-time. A few years back, I took what was basically an internship and was basically the vice president of sales for a small company that looked bigger than it actually was. The owner of that company owned a franchise I worked for part-time, and I was making maybe $50,000 a year, basically as an admin assistant with a snazzy title. Because I worked for his original company part-time, it looked like I had been with the company for 7+ years, when in reality, I had done very little and was making maybe $15 an hour most of that time. 2 years ago, I leveraged that to get a regional manager job at a larger company, used my buddy who worked with me as a reference, and I ended up getting hired making over $100,000 a year base pay, plus a bonus that I would also receive. I did okay there, but it was clear that I didn't have the chops for it, and I was still learning. And in the end, I got laid off in March. But thankfully, my boss I was good with said that they would verify whenever I needed a reference. Well, when I started applying for jobs, I listed my experience as their regional vice president of sales and created this hybrid job description about what I actually did and included some senior level duties to make it sound like I was a key employee. I then ended up with an interview for this startup company, completely BSing my way through 5 interviews, and I got an offer for a $200,000 base pay, plus a bonus to run their sales division and deal with their external stakeholders. And you know what? I thought I could handle that, but I honestly can't. The job is extremely plug and play. They wanted me to completely revamp their entire sales structure week 1, and I didn't even know what their product did. I tried to BS my way through client calls, but these people have been tearing me apart every week for any strategy that I recommend, and are letting me know how worthless I am. time. If I don't get fired by Friday, I will be absolutely shocked after the call I had today. I got away with it for a few months through being respectful, attentive, and giving 110% towards figuring it out, but it is clear that I don't have the skills needed to be where I am yet, so I'm just completely screwed. They say fake it until you make it, but faking it doesn't work unless you know how to make it yet. I feel like Mike Ross in Suits, but instead of being competent but lying about my credentials, I actually have the degrees, but I over-exaggerated my experiences, and they bought it, so I'm just the idiot in the wrong spot. What should I do? Before we go any further, the original poster actually gave us an update. Here's what they had to say. Okay, I was gone for a lot of last night, and oh my god, I didn't expect this to blow up in the way that it did. But many of you have provided phenomenal advice on how I can navigate things, and luckily, everything is such a mess at this place that it's at a point where the ship is already halfway into the water. So as long as I keep it from completely sinking, I would consider it a huge success. So seriously, thank you to everybody from the bottom of my heart. Now, to answer a question that's been asked, is that honestly, the biggest problem is that I'm stuck between this awful love triangle as to what they actually want to happen. The end goal changes monthly, and every strategy that I propose just gets shut down. There's two partners who both want a different strategy and outcome for a different reason. Then there's this needy jerk third-party investor whose end goal is to simply IPO or get acquired in the next 18 months, which in this case is the absolute best thing that could happen, and they probably should have been looking into this months ago unless they want to toss cash into a fire, all of which are impossible because they're now bleeding money, and half of that time I'm trying to maintain relationships with very pissed off key account stakeholders. I'm failing on all accounts, and I don't have the experience or skills to navigate any of this garbage. Wow, this is really funny to me because oh my god, I can't imagine being in this scenario. Here you land a job that pays really well, which is all after you literally exaggerating all of your experience. Like, that is already stressful enough, and I'm so sorry that you're going through that, but seriously, it is so funny that you found yourself in this position. Like, if this is not the definition of like what can go wrong when you fake it until you make it, then I just don't know what is. Because the original poster has it right. If you're trying to fake it until you make it, you've got to know something before you try to make it. And it really seems like the original poster is in over his head. So honestly, I really hope this all works out for you, because what you described sounds like a very comedic nightmare. And if you're lucky, this company can get acquired by somebody else. Am I the jerk for not letting my mom see my kids after she tried to fat shame my daughter? Here's what happened. I'm a 31-year-old female, and I was always on the chubby side growing up, and my mom, who's 58, was always hard on me for my weight. It deeply impacted my self-esteem to the point that I ended up losing an unhealthy amount of weight in my teenage years just in some kind of effort to please her. Once I left the house, I gained some weight back, and after years of therapy, I finally felt like I had a healthy relationship to food and exercise. My mom also seemed to stop being obsessed with my body once I wasn't around her 24/7, and our relationship got a lot better. I eventually had a daughter 9 years ago. Let's call her Mia for the sake of the story, and Mia is a sweet girl and adores her grandmother. Well, a couple of days ago, I sent her and her brother, who we will call Liam, to stay with my parents for the weekend. On the car ride home, I noticed that Mia wasn't her usual bubbly self, and I asked her if something was wrong. She was clearly embarrassed, but eventually she started to bawl her eyes out, and she told me what happened. Apparently, that afternoon, they had gone out for ice cream, and Mia tried to order a cone with 2 scoops, but my mother stopped her and changed her order to a single scoop and a cup. And when Liam ordered a cone with 2 scoops, my mom didn't say a word. When Mia asked why Liam got a cone and not her, my mother told her it was because she's fat, and she needs to lose weight or nobody will ever find her attractive. And when I heard that, I was livid. The second we got home, I called my mom, and I told her that what she said was completely unacceptable, and that from now on, I would have to chaperone any time she spent with my daughter. My mom then told me that I was overreacting, and that Mia was exaggerating, and that I shouldn't believe a 9-year-old over her. She told me it's probably just something she picked up in dance class, and that I was just projecting. Now, I was pretty sure that she was full of crap, but I wanted to verify anyway, so I had another talk with Mia. I told her that if my mother says anything like that to her ever again, that she needs to tell me right away. She started crying again and told me that not only was this not the first time something like this happened, but also that my mother told Mia not to tell me because I'm fat and she wouldn't want to be like me. Well, I called my mom again, and I told her everything that Mia told me, and all she could say was, "Well, was I wrong? You are fat." And after she said that, I just hung up. She tried to call me again, but I just didn't pick up, and I haven't responded to her ever since. This morning, she got my brother involved, and he thinks it is an an overreaction to not respond and that she didn't mean any harm, but I am pretty adamant about not wanting to expose my daughter to any of her BS. I told my brother that if my mother is willing to apologize to Mia and me and agree to chaperone visits, I might consider letting them see each other. But you know what? I know she won't do that. Now, I feel horrible about all of this because it's Liam's birthday next week, and I know he wants his grandmother there, but I just don't feel comfortable with my kids being around her yet. So am I the jerk for the way I reacted to my mom's comments? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk. That is so inappropriate. First and foremost, the biggest red flag in my opinion is your mom trying to get your kid to keep a secret. Seriously, that is so messed up. That is absolutely not okay. You do not go to someone else's kid and be like, okay, keep this secret. Don't tell your mom that I said this about you. Like, no, that is not okay. You do not keep secrets with kids, especially with the parents not being aware of what you're talking about. That is highly inappropriate and, in my opinion, incredibly creepy. But more to the point, I think the grandma's behavior in this story is absolutely inappropriate. She has no right to target this kid in this way, and if anything, this is just the original poster's mom literally picking up where she left off in the original poster's childhood. And to that end, I don't blame you in the slightest for being like, no, you're not going to talk to my kid like that. So no, you are definitely not the jerk, because if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. Am I the jerk for standing my ground and not letting my suite mates take my dorm room after I found out that my roommate would not be living with me during our fall semester? Because right now, my roommate is screaming at me saying that I'm a jerk and that I don't understand his needs. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, our college randomly assigns suites and rooms to students that apply for dorming. It is not chosen by the students, only the buildings and who they wish to room with. I'm a 19-year-old male and I'm moving to college in the fall. I am in the process of getting to know my suite mates and roommate since I chose to do random assignment because I had applied late to college and everyone already chose roommates, so I had to go with the first bed that was open. After I had been assigned a room, my actual roommate added me and we began talking. However, he soon blocked me and I could no longer contact him. A week after this happened, my suite mates got in contact with me. They added me and we started to talk. They then asked me if I happened to know my roommate since he was the only one they hadn't talked with yet. I said yes, but after we talked a bit, he just blocked me. We then all had the assumption that he would be no longer dorming with us, hence the need to block me on Instagram. So after much discussion, that's the best answer we could come up with as to why he did so. And I thought that was the end of the discussion, but it seems I would be wrong. One of my suite mates, let's call him Phineas, that's not his real name, would later tell us that we should vote on who got the room. Now, me being confused, asked him why since I got the room fair and square by it being assigned to me. But he said that he wasn't aware that the rooms were assigned and that even if they were, we should vote on who gets it anyway since he wanted it. Well, I told him no for a second time and I wanted it to be over with. He then told me that he had a girlfriend and that I could understand that, right? Well, no. I get that she's going to visit every now and then and that it would be nice to have some privacy, especially if they were going to do some spicy things, but I already told him that I wanted the room since it was assigned to me and that if he wanted a single, then he should have booked a single. He keeps pushing the matter when I shut him down every time, and I told him that if he continues to talk about it, I would go to the RA and get in contact with the school about the whole situation and how Phineas wanted to violate explicit rules and guidelines of living in the dorms. Now, for more context, our college does not allow the opposite sex to enter the bedrooms of the student and may only stay in the common area with the suite door open to the hallway. And this was a strict rule that even adheres to parents and family. The guy then called me a jerk and said that I don't even need it since I'm single and I would never understand. My other suite mate, who we will call Ferb, obviously not his real name, thinks that we should see who needs the room more and give it to them. But I think that it rightfully belongs to me since I was assigned the room and bed, and that if I got so lucky that I didn't have a roommate anymore, then that was my luck and not theirs. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk, and it's very obvious that your roommate is jealous that you've got this massive room to yourself. Like seriously, he's just jealous that he doesn't have that room and you get to share all that space by yourself. Like you definitely got a good deal and that is not anybody's problem except for his. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, and the way he's acting is incredibly entitled. Am I the jerk for agreeing with my wife when she called my mom a piece of garbage parent after she brought up something that I did when I was 14, despite the fact that I've grown up and done a lot with my life ever since then? Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my birth family never respected me. I always got treated differently from the rest of my siblings, and I was never ever good enough. I'm the only one with a college education, and I received my master's degree. No one from my side of the family came to my graduation or even acted like they cared while my wife's family threw me a huge party. Now, I don't know if it stems from me being a weird emo kid when I was a teenager, because my family still says dumb things like, "Oh, remember when you had green hair?" as if that was a defining moment in my life. And for reference, I had green hair for maybe 3 months when I was 14 years old. And that's really an odd thing for my family to be hung up on. My sister-in-law was pregnant, and I share the same name with her father, who passed away last year. For the sake of the story, we'll say that name is Larry. She named her baby after both of us because I helped her out financially and encouraged her to finish her degree. Well, I saw my mother, and me and my wife were babysitting little Larry because my sister-in-law was working. My mom then said that we should dye little Larry's hair green. Well, when she said that, this set my wife off, and she started yelling at my mom, saying how pathetic it was that with all of my achievements, my mom was still upset that I dyed my hair green as a teenager. And then she called my mom a pathetic piece of garbage parent. My wife then asked my mom to leave the house because my sister-in-law wouldn't want little Larry around such judgmental trash. Well, I stood there for a few seconds, and then I responded by saying, "She's right, you should leave." Well, my mom thinks that I should have stood up for her, but I believe her obsession with my once green hair is really odd, and my family needs to let it go. So am I the jerk for agreeing with my wife? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk, and yes, it is very weird that they're holding on to what you did when you were 14. Like seriously, they're holding that much of a grudge that you did something that they didn't approve of? Like that is seriously toxic and so weird. It sounds like you've done so much with your life, but these people want to keep you as that weird kid at 14 who was trying to understand himself. And that's not fair for you in the slightest. Like seriously, you've grown up since then. And it's also so funny that your mom's like, "Wait a second, she can't talk to me like that. You need to stand up for me when I make condescending remarks about you." Because that's basically what she was saying. Like it almost sounds like she wants this to be some kind of like inside joke with the family, but this is definitely not reciprocated on your end. You have not done anything to indicate like, "Yeah, this is funny, let's keep this joke alive," or anything to suggest that you're in on the joke in some kind of way. So in my opinion, her remarks were completely out of line, and it's so cool to see that you have a wife who's willing to stand up for you when someone says something awful. And if anything, I think your mom absolutely needs to apologize. My entitled sister is toxic beyond measure, constantly screaming and giving an attitude to me and her parents, while also directing this energy at pretty much anybody who gets in her way. And despite the fact that I've told my parents about this constantly, they refuse to do anything and even go as far as blaming me for her bad attitude. And I'm honestly so sick of it, and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My sister, who's 15 years old, has always been selfish. Ever since she was a kid, she would never share. She would never do anything for anyone else, but would expect everyone to do everything for her. Obviously, as a small child, that is understandable, but she's never grown out of it. And my parents have always dismissed this as just her personality. My sister has always been rude to me specifically, and she demands that I do things for her. She demands I make her food, and demands that I pay for her things, and that I do this or that or anything else. But if I ask the same, she just shouts at me. I don't remember the last time she's done anything for anyone out of the kindness of her own heart. She just shouts. There's been times I've been violently ill and bedridden due to a chronic illness, and I asked her if she could get me some water, and she shouted at me, even though I make her food and drink multiple times a day, because if I don't, she just won't eat. She's also rude about everything. Anytime someone talks to her, she has a tone in her voice or she shouts. She is so difficult to have any kind of conversation with. If I say nice things, she's rude to me, and then she screams, and it's just awful. And my parents say nothing, but if I dare talk half as bad as she does, I get told off. I've mentioned countless times the favoritism and how they see her as a perfect little angel, and they coddle her and rarely tell her off, and has never given her any discipline, yet they have always done that to me, and they've acted like I was the crazy one. She's also incredibly manipulative. She always plays the victim and turns my parents against me when she is in the wrong. I told my parents that one day, people are going to have enough of her in the real world, and I'm going to have to cut contact if her behavior continues. And again, they just won't listen to me, and instead thought that it was just sisterly love, and that this is normal sister behavior and not concerning behavior. But thankfully, all of that changed this week, where we went to a family reunion, and my cousins humbled her. She was doing her normal toxic behavior. She was talking to them rudely and rolling her eyes at them, which is something she does to pretty much everybody. And my 23-year-old cousin wasn't having it. He said to her, "Listen, if you keep acting like this in the real world, you are going to get slapped in the face," while also saying that she needs to cut her attitude. And my sister just rudely said, "Yeah, sure, okay," as if he was stupid or something like that. And my 12-year-old cousin added that he always always feels like she judges him because she always just glares at him. Now, obviously, my parents couldn't deny this, and it was actually a really big wake-up call. They realized her behavior isn't just to immediate family, and it isn't normal to outsiders. And she would do this same behavior to people that she isn't even as close to, and not just to her parents and sister. So now my parents are telling me that I can't get her food and water, and she needs to do some things for herself, and they are forcing her to be independent. And they've even been talking about disciplining her when she is toxic. And trust me, she is not taking it well. She's been screaming at me even though it's not my fault, and I haven't done anything wrong. It's a bit late, but I'm glad they are finally putting their foot down, and no longer looking at her as this perfect little angel who can do no wrong. But regardless, I seriously hope they stick with it, because her behavior is absolutely awful. Yeah, your sister sounds incredibly spoiled, and this really sucks because it seems like this is your parents' fault. Don't get me wrong, your sister does have a bad attitude, and that is her problem, but the parents have basically said, oh, this is fine, don't worry about it. They've played favoritism, and they've basically allowed this to happen across the board. And you know it's real and it's bad when someone else who isn't around you all the time blatantly says, hey, you've got to stop that attitude. Like, this is not okay, and seriously, it is not something that's going to work in the real world. So you know what? Despite the fact that they were neglectful in the beginning, it sounds like your parents are coming around and figuring out your sister's attitude, because the way she's been acting is completely inappropriate. And hopefully with time, all of this can finally get switched around. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled friend sends me over 69 messages after I tell her I'm taking a day off from trying to teach her English. But now I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, I need to start off by saying that I'm a people pleaser and a doormat, so be aware that I'm not innocent in any of this, and I am responsible for letting the situation progress and worsen without firmly shutting it down sooner. Believe me, I know it is also my fault. Now, I speak English fluently. I'm not perfect by any means, but my level is C2, so I am definitely proficient. My friend doesn't speak English very well, but I love helping people, and so I offered her free lessons to improve her speaking skills. She was supposed to study on her own, and I gave her a list of links that provide easy and clear grammar rules on all of the necessary topics to reach a B2 level. Well, she lost said list a number of times, she didn't study, and she stopped following lessons with me due to her depression. Now, I don't blame her because I have my own issues, but now August is coming to an end, and she is anxious because she needs her English to improve in order to find a job. She wants me to give her 2-hour lessons every day after work, and despite the fact that I work full-time, I consented, which honestly was my first mistake. Fast forward and we get to Saturday, and I told her last week and then reminded her on Friday that yesterday would have been my day off and that I would have gone out to do my own thing. She was also allowed to send me messages, which is my second mistake, and I figured that I would reply whenever I had the time. Now, take a guess. How many messages do you think I got? Literally, I got 69 messages. I counted them. It was insane. She would ask me silly questions that I have either already replied to a bunch of times or that are easily answered by a search on Google. We were supposed to do a 4-hour lesson today, but frankly, I am so pissed off that I haven't even replied yet. I can tell from her tone in the messages that she is annoyed and mad. She wrote 3 or 4 times by saying, okay, so when you reply, we'll figure this out, which to me reads like she just wants me to reply back faster. Like, who in their right mind sends 69 text messages to someone who clearly and explicitly said that this is my day off and I will be out and about? I'm honestly so frustrated, and I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, this doesn't sound like a friend, but instead it sounds like someone who's very lazy, who's basically trying to place like all responsibility on learning English on your shoulders and yours alone. You've given her resources so she can learn English. You've done everything you can, and you've given way more time than anyone would reasonably give. So in my opinion, especially after receiving 69 text messages, I would tell her, I'm sorry, but this is not working out, because this right here is insane behavior, and I really think you would be better off shutting this all down now instead of dragging this out and trying to people please her any longer. An entitled manager at HR and payroll demands that we automate all of her decisions so that just about anybody from her department can have access to anything that HR and payroll would normally have. And even though we told her that this was not a good idea, she demanded that we did it, resulting in one of the greatest forms of karma I've ever seen in my life. Here's what happened. In my first job, I worked in IT as an access and permissions administrator at a large company with a significant technological debt. The environment included custom software dating back to Windows 9 and even the DOS era. Initially, the work was quite tedious, involving a lot of back and forth forth communication between multiple departments, and we had to ensure that each employee had the necessary training and documentation to access data in the scope requested by their manager. Additionally, we needed approval from the manager of the department related to the system role in question. On top of that, the company's excessive paper-only bureaucratic workflow made this work go at a snail's pace. I mean, a single SAP account for a blue-collar worker required at least 3 forms signed by different people. The heads of departments responsible for signing those papers didn't feel any urgency to send them to us quickly. A good example of this is when I myself waited over 2 weeks after being hired in the IT department before my first account was ever set up. Until then, I only had a guest account that allowed me to access the main internal website with the company's procedures, regulations, and other basic information. Up to this point, each signed form had to be physically delivered to us, which was agonizingly slow given that the company had multiple branches. So we decided to automate away the paperwork. Our first step was to allow the use of scanned documents. It was a partial success because while it did eliminate courier delays, management still required us to sign the physical copies afterwards, which we mass stamped at the end of each month. The next step was to introduce a fully electronic workflow. We faced significant resistance from upper management, so we had to settle on a system that mostly replicated the existing paper processes. Despite this, it honestly really was a game changer. We created presets that managers could select and customize as needed, while also using data from these customizations to create better fitting presets. We also developed workflows that automatically generated and assigned subtickets for necessary approvals and tracked how long it took, even sending reminders if needed. And finally, we got an approval from HR to access layoff data to generate a user block or removal tickets. Now, sometime after we rolled out the new system, the HR and payroll manager made a big fuss. She was furious that her team was still waiting weeks to get their permissions and questioned whether our work had been for nothing. Now, with all things considered, that really struck a chord with me. Inside, I was overjoyed, but I did my best to keep a neutral expression. At that time, we were working on summary reports with burn down and bottleneck charts, and I already knew that tickets requesting HR payroll access were spending over most of their lifespan waiting for her or one of her sub-managers to approve them. Well, the manager immediately went on the defensive, claiming that she couldn't keep up with the amount of tickets. She then requested a change. She wanted any request from her employee to be automatically approved within the relevant scope of their sub-department. For example, a request for an HR worker to have full HR access and limited payroll access would be automatically approved for HR access, but not for payroll and vice versa. Now, I was skeptical, but I wasn't exactly in a position to argue. I asked my boss to join the discussion and explained that the goal was to prevent overly permissive approvals that could lead to unauthorized access. Basically, we wanted to keep people out who didn't belong there. I tried my best to convince her to brainstorm together potential edge cases before making a blanket approval, but she was already set on her decision and wasn't interested in discussing details. So my boss just shrugged and said it would be her responsibility. He told her to write up an official document outlining the change and that he would proceed with the implementation. The only request we had was to include a line that each such request would still be created and assigned to as normal and marked as automatically approved by the HR manager's decision. I then uploaded the scan into our system and, anticipating that it would eventually backfire, made a photocopy to keep handy in the top drawer of my desk, with the original copy going to the archive. Well, a few weeks later, she stormed into our room, and the speed with which she flung open the door made it clear that she was furious. She demanded to know why we had granted full access to payroll data to her subordinate. Now, I think it was the only time I ever heard anyone yell in that company, so I calmly reminded her that she requested to automatically approve in-department access requests. Well, she wasn't having it, explaining that one of her low-ranking subordinates from the payroll sub-department had access to the salaries of everyone in their department, including their managers, and was unhappy with the paycheck disparity. She then said to me, "Isn't that obvious that they shouldn't be able to do that?" I responded by saying, "Well, yeah, to a human, but that decision was automated away by your request." I then handed her a copy of the document that she had signed, which instructed us to automatically approve any and all such tickets without any exception. Well, immediately afterwards, she asked us to roll back the change while she wrote up another document to cancel the previous one. In the following days, she meticulously reviewed all of those tickets and requested us to reduce access for several users. Now, I have to admit, she did a thorough job and kept up a good pace in reviewing new requests, and was doing it daily instead of once every week or 2 weeks weeks as before. In the end, we managed to distill a subset of permissions that could be approved automatically and proceeded to implement a similar approach with other departments. Because trust me, I'm sure this manager absolutely learned her lesson. Yeah, this is one of those situations where the manager was way too lazy to do her own job, so she wanted to automate it in some kind of way, and that backfired in a spectacular fashion. Here you are, the IT professional, trying to be like, wait a second, this is not a good idea, and she's like, no, this is what I want to do. So getting her to sign off on all of that, and then keeping a copy on hand because you knew this was all gonna go down, in my opinion, is super hilarious and absolutely deserved, because if she had just done her job, all of this could have been avoided. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for leaving my fiance after receiving pictures of him cheating on me at his bachelor party? Here's what happened. Okay, so for a bit of background, I was planning my wedding with my 30-year-old fiance, who we will call Jake for the sake of the story. We've been together for 4 years, and honestly, I thought that we had a great relationship. His bachelor party was last weekend, and it was something that we had both discussed and agreed upon. He was going to Vegas with his friends for a few days, and I was totally on board with it. Fast forward to Saturday night, and I was at home binge watching my favorite show when I received a message on my phone that made my heart drop. It was Jake's best friend, who we will call Mike. We're all friendly, so I don't think much of it at first. But when I opened the message, my heart sank further. It was a series of pictures showing Jake with another woman, obviously holding her waist and laughing together at a club. The caption read, "I thought you'd want to see what your fiance is up to. This is not cool, man." And when I saw this, I was in shock. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from underneath me. I immediately called Mike, and he explained that he didn't want to be a part of Jake's betrayal and thought that I should know as well. He told me that this wasn't a one-time thing and that they had seen Jake get pretty close with this woman throughout the night. The next few hours were a blur, and I went through a wave of emotions, from anger to heartbreak all the way to disbelief. I couldn't understand how someone I thought I knew so well could do this kind of thing to me. I finally decided that I had had enough, and I went to my parents' house to process everything. The next day, I called Jake, and when he finally picked up, he sounded cheerful as if nothing was wrong. I then confronted him directly, and I asked him about the pictures, and when I did, he went silent. Eventually, he tried to brush it off, saying it was just harmless fun and that I was overreacting, and that just fueled my anger even more. So I told him that I couldn't continue the relationship, and when I said that, he panicked, begging me to reconsider, but I stayed firm. I have always believed in healthy boundaries and trust in a relationship, and what he did shattered that completely. I packed my things and I told Jake that it was over. I wish I could say I felt better after that, but honestly, it was heartbreaking. Now that I'm back home, I'm trying to put my life back together. My friends are supportive, but I just can't shake the feeling that I'm making a mistake by leaving him. So am I the jerk for ending our engagement after finding out about him cheating? What should I do? No, I don't blame you in the slightest for doing that, because if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. Seriously, what he did is a huge betrayal of trust. You two are getting married. This guy has no excuse for acting like this. I mean, thank God that Mike actually had your back and was like, hey, I thought you might want to know what's actually going on. Seriously, Mike is a real one, and he saved you from a lot of heartbreak. So no, you are definitely not the jerk in this situation, because what Jake did is absolutely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for asking for my money back from a restaurant that literally overcharged me for a dish that I never even ordered? Here's what happened. So I've just been overcharged at a restaurant and ended up in a really awkward situation. And I'm wondering if my reaction was correct or not, because the way they reacted was so odd to me. My girlfriend and I went to eat at this fairly small restaurant that is close to where we live, and this place opened up 6 months ago, but it doesn't seem like it's doing very well. When we went to pay the bill at the counter, it was 35% more than what I had calculated from the prices on the menu. Several people, I think all family, were stood around, so we didn't have a chance to look the bill over, and I assumed maybe I had made a mistake, so we just paid it and left. Well, as soon as we got outside, I said to my girlfriend, "Was that bill right?" And she said, "No, I thought it was wrong as well." So we decided to go back, and my girlfriend said really nicely, "Hey there, I think you may have made a mistake with our bill." She is super sweet and polite, and the woman was kind of dramatic about it, but got our receipt to look at it. It turns out that they had charged us for one drink that we didn't have, and quite quickly gave my girlfriend the money back for that, but in a weird dramatic way, as if we were making a fuss about nothing, but that only accounted for about 5% of the 35% overcharge. Eventually, they tell us that they didn't have the main dish that we had ordered, so instead they gave us a different version that cost 30% more than the things we actually asked for. And here's the thing, we were not told that they didn't have the dish that we actually ordered prior to being served the food. At no point prior to giving us the bill was it communicated that we were getting a different dish, let alone one that would be way more expensive. The worst part is that rather than apologizing and giving us back the overcharge, they just kept saying, "Oh, sorry for that," as if that should be the end of the matter and waiting for us to just leave. The guy just kept repeating that they didn't have the dish that we ordered, and I was smiling and saying, "Okay, but that's not really how this works," until it became very awkward and I ended up having to say, "Listen, I don't know why I'm paying extra for something I didn't order," at which point the woman says very dramatically, "Oh, so you want your money back?" To which I said, "Yes, actually I really do." They did then give me my money back, but I don't think it should have ever gotten to that point that I needed to ask for it, and now I have to walk past that restaurant every day on my way to work. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You are not the jerk for going back there and demanding your money back, because these people were literally praying that you would not ask for your money back so that they could get away with overcharging you more. Like, that is ridiculous and there is no good excuse for that. So no, you are definitely not the jerk, because the way these people acted, in my opinion, is incredibly unethical. Am I the jerk for starting my wedding ceremony before my mom could show up, because she's saying it's now my fault that she wasn't on time since I didn't call or text her to see where she was at? And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so the day of the wedding started out as they normally do. I'm the bride and I was inside getting ready and the final touches were being made outside. After I was almost ready by noon, my mom had to run back to the hotel 20 minutes away to change and come back with my grandma and a family friend. Now, the invitation says that the ceremony is at 2 o'clock, and as per usual, we were a little late starting, but it wasn't anything crazy. Well, the next thing I know, I'm walking down the aisle with no mom, no grandma, or my family friend in sight. The ceremony continues and it's over before we know it. Well, we still hear nothing from them. After about 45 minutes, they finally pull up. I then proceed to go and tell them that it's over and that they missed it and that 2 o'clock means 2 o'clock. Well, my mother immediately becomes hostile and proceeded to blame the bakery for not having buns ready. Then they said they were stopped by a train, and my personal favorite excuse is that apparently it's my fault because I didn't call or text them to see where they were. And I'm just thinking, excuse me? The invitation said 2 o'clock. It's also important to note that the officiant also had another wedding to get to after mine, so it really was a tight schedule. So am I the jerk for not holding up my ceremony? I found out the real reason why they were late, and it all comes down to the fact that she wasn't done getting herself ready, therefore she held up everyone from getting here. But apparently she's mad at me because it's my fault. What should I do? No, this is definitely not your fault, and honestly, it all falls on your mom for not being ready and prioritizing her time. Seriously, anything that she might need is completely null and void in my opinion, especially when you're about to walk down the aisle. Like, she really should have had all that figured out well in advance, and that in my opinion is definitely not your fault. My entitled aunt has been fat shaming me my entire life and decided that she was going to give me money for my 18th birthday so that I could get on Weight Watchers and finally get in good health. But after denying her gift as well as dealing with her awful behavior my entire life, I finally put my foot down and decided that enough was enough. But now, as a result, my aunt is offended and my parents think that I overreacted. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I'm a female and I just turned 18 yesterday, but it seemed to have caused a bit of drama in my family, so I'm asking for honest, objective opinions on whether I'm wrong. I'm using a throwaway account because this situation is obviously very humiliating for me. For reference, my weight has always been made fun of in my family. My aunt specifically has always been very unkind and fat shamed me, even when I was younger and struggling with my body image. She used to tell me that my clothes look so small on me, and that even her clothes are probably small for me. She used to remind me to go on diets constantly, and I'm currently 320 pounds if that adds any context to it. Now, I had not seen my aunt in a while, and for the most part, I was really glad to see her for my birthday. I was slightly dreading if she would say anything to me because I'm aware I have gained a lot of weight since I saw her last, but she made just a few comments, so I thought that was the end of it. I was opening a birthday card that she gave me a few hours later, and it had money in it, but it also had a note that said that this money was for Weight Watchers, and that for once I can finally make some real change. Now, this was humiliating, and I asked her about it, and she said that she could tell that I was miserable, and that I probably look really good underneath all that fat. And she even said this in front of my parents, and it was very embarrassing. Well, I told her I'm not accepting the gift, and that she's making me feel stupid, but she said that she was just worried for me and my health, but I just don't believe this. She has made fun of my weight for years, even before I was a teenager, but my parents think I was overreacting, and I should have just accepted it right then and there. My aunt has a notoriously big mouth, and my parents think that she's going to tell our whole family, so they're getting kind of worried about what I've done. So am I the jerk for refusing this birthday gift? What should I do? No, of course you're not the jerk. This is insane. First of all, I want to say your parents suck, and they have allowed this to happen for way too long. Like seriously, they are literally just a bunch of spineless doormats. They've allowed their daughter to be harassed by their aunt for what, 18 years? Like that is insane, and there is no good excuse for that. Like your parents are 100% horrible people for allowing this to happen. And based off the way they're reacting, I bet they were one of the people that was like making fun of you when you were a kid. Like sure, it was your aunt, but you know what? Your parents probably found it funny, and that's why they never said anything. And by the way, they literally allowed this to happen more times than you can count. Because I can guarantee you this is not the only conversation they've had about this, because if they're saying this in front of you in public, then you better believe they're saying this in private behind your back. But more to the point about your aunt, this is literally not a gift. This is not something you give to someone and be like, well, I'm just really worried about your health. It's like, no, you're not. That's not what's going on at all. In reality, this is literally the curtain call for your aunt basically treating you like garbage throughout your entire childhood. Because guess what? Now that you're 18 years old, you can literally tell her to get lost and there's nothing anybody can do about it. Like she now knows that she can't get away with this because you're now an adult and you can absolutely tell her off if you want to. So this is like the last little feather in her cap of treating you like garbage for years. And that is absolutely not fair for you in the slightest. So no, you are completely in the right to be like, I'm not accepting this. This is humiliating. Because that's exactly what it is. And you know what? I hope your aunt goes around saying something to the rest of the family. Because seriously, this is a great opportunity to expose your aunt for the horrible person that she is. And even your parents for letting this happen for what, 18 years? Like, come on. No one in their right mind should be on your aunt's side. And if they are, then guess what? You now know what they actually are like, and you know you don't want anything to do with them. At least that's how I feel. Like if I found out my family members were like, wait a second, why are you being so rude? You are fat. You need this, Weight Watchers. Like I would lose my mind and be like, okay, all of you are gone. I'm not dealing with any of you. Because your weight and your health and all that stuff, that is your business. And you don't need anybody trying to like look out for you or fat shaming you, especially from a scumbag bully like your aunt. Because that's all this is. Like she is literally a grade A bully. You've been an easy target with your parents' permission, and now that you're 18, this is like the last little dig she can make at you before you move on with your life. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to allow my brother to drive with us to the family vacation, as he is known for being very obnoxious and very hard to deal with? Because right now, my mom is very upset, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for a bit of context, my partner and I have autism, and my 15-year-old brother has severe ADHD. My brother is immature, careless, and deep in puberty. He's known for being a handful, he's constantly late, and destructive with his belongings and others. For instance, he's broken multiple phones and laptops that my mom has bought him. This Friday, we're planning a family trip across the country, and my partner and I were looking forward to a peaceful road trip alone, having planned our drive and stops in advance. However, today my mom found out that my partner would be driving and decided to have my brother ride with us, saying, well, since you're driving anyways, he can come with you. She and her boyfriend are driving separately in a 2-seater van due to the amount of stuff they need to bring. Now, we really don't want to babysit an unruly 15-year-old for 4 hours, especially since we weren't asked nicely and just told that he would be with us. Normally, my mom and her boyfriend drive in 2 separate cars, so we assumed that would happen again. But this year though, with my partner joining us, they saw an opportunity to shift responsibility. While we understand their reasoning and offered to take him if absolutely necessary, we were not happy about the situation. And when I talked to my mom, she didn't have convincing arguments. For starters, she tried to say that driving separately is expensive, but we offered to cover the extra gas since we were causing the inconvenience in her eyes, but she declined. Also, he can't drive with our sister because they'll arrive later. However, we're not planning to arrive on time either, as we're taking a more relaxed trip. My partner, who is an anxious driver, prefers not to drive in a convoy and likes to rely on her sat-nav, especially due to her autism. But in the end, our conclusion is that we could take him if necessary, but we will be doing it reluctantly. We have a lot to bring and we aren't sure everything will fit. Plus, if he's coming with us, he will need to follow our schedule, meaning that we likely won't arrive on time. But now, my mom is upset and said that she'll ask my sister after all, despite never asking us first. We feel we offered a reasonable compromise, but she's implying that everyone has to make sacrifices, while essentially making my brother our responsibility. So are we the jerks in this situation? What should we do? No, you're not the jerks. Your mom mom literally went to you and tried to muscle your brother into your car, all because she doesn't want to deal with him. Like, this really is reading as if she's trying to kick the can down the road, and that's not fair for you in the slightest. And the fact that she tried to force you to take your brother with you, in my opinion, is just further evidence that she was trying to make this happen no matter what. Even going as far as trying to guilt trip you by being like, oh, I guess we'll ask your sister anyways. And honestly, with what you described, I don't think you should compromise with these people at all. Like, they literally tried to force this brother into your car, who, by the way, is very careless and very immature. Like, who knows how obnoxious he's gonna be during this entire trip, and that's gonna be your problem the entire time. So no, you're not the jerk for refusing to take your brother, because he really does sound like an absolute handful. Am I the jerk for telling my coworker that she still has to pay me for the unused tickets that she never used that I gave to her? Because right now she's angry with me for even requesting it in the first place. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I've worked with my coworker for about a year now. She is nice and I enjoy working with her, and we've talked about hanging out outside of work a few times, but our schedules never match since I have kids and she has a boyfriend out of town that she visits frequently. A few months ago, she forgot her lunch, so I shared mine with her. Since then, she's been slowly starting to ask for more things and taking more liberties with my stuff. For example, I usually have crackers or granola bars in my bag in case I forget my lunch, and I also have hard candies since we can't chew gum at work. At first, she would ask for the candies, then she just started going straight in the bag to get them, and that was the same with the crackers and the bars. If I have something that she doesn't like, she'll go in there, say something like, ew, never mind, all before closing my bag back up. Now, I did address this behavior with her because one day I actually did forget my lunch. When I got to the break room, I saw her eating the crackers that I had in my bag, and I was a little annoyed that she went in my bag when I wasn't there, but I just assumed that she didn't have lunch until I saw her take her food out of the fridge and put it in the microwave. I then reminded her why I keep the snacks in my bag and said that I didn't have anything to eat now that she's eaten this and her food. She eventually apologized but did not share her food with me since it was made special by her boyfriend. Now, more to the issue, I bought tickets to the circus for my kids and siblings, and some of my siblings couldn't make it, so I had extra tickets. So I told her about them, that it was happening that night, and I told her the price, and I asked if she wanted to buy them. Well, she agreed, and I texted them to her. When she got them, she said, oh, is it okay if I pay you Saturday? And I just said sure because I had no reason not to. Saturday comes along, and she's not at work, and no money came through on Cash App. On Tuesday, when I saw her, I asked for the money, and she said to me, oh, I never ended up going. My friend didn't want to go in the end. I said to her, okay, but she replied by saying, well, I never used them. We didn't go because you never told me it was that night. I thought we had 2 weeks to use them. But I said to her, I told you before I sent them to you that it was that night, and to make sure you can go before I send them. She said, well, I don't know what you want since I didn't use them. I said to her, well, I want money for the tickets. When you knew you weren't going to use them, you should have texted me back because I could have given them to somebody else. Well, in response, all she said was, my bad, and then she walked away. Later that week, she asked if she could take me to a baseball game to make up for the tickets that she didn't pay for, and she said that she'll pay for the tickets so that she won't owe me anymore. Well, the baseball tickets are less expensive than the ones I got, and I don't want to go to a baseball game anyways. So I just told her that I need the money, and now she's mad at me. So am I the jerk for asking for my money? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk, because she basically took those tickets and did nothing with it. When she said, okay, I'm gonna go to this thing tonight, but then she tried to backtrack and be like, well, we didn't use it and you didn't tell me what day it was, even though that's completely false and she absolutely knew what was going on. Like, this is definitely one of those people who just uses everybody in their friend group and they never reciprocate in the slightest. Like, all she has to do is pay for the tickets and all of this is done, but instead she's giving you the runaround for literally no reason. And in my opinion, yes, she's absolutely on the hook for those tickets. So no, you are definitely not the jerk, because if I was in your shoes, I would do the exact same thing. A very distant relative walked into our house without us knowing about it and acted as if he was inspecting our house. And honestly, after it all went down, I'm still amazed by this guy's audacity, and I really hope he never comes back ever again. Here's what happened. Okay, so I live in a house with my boyfriend and my dad, and yesterday my boyfriend's niece wanted to hang out with me after school, so he dropped her off to hang out with me and told me either him or his mom will pick her up. Now, I had to leave work at about 6 o'clock p.m., and my boyfriend didn't get off work until about 8 o'clock p.m. My dad got home at around 7 o'clock p.m. and was having dinner when my boyfriend's sister came to pick the girl up with her husband. Well, without any kind of notice, an uncle was there with them as well. The sister and her husband were both standing in the living room calling for their daughter. However, the uncle, without asking for consent, walked right right through our house. Now, it wouldn't be a problem if he stopped at the living room or even like the kitchen or the backyard. However, the uncle legitimately just went through the house like he was doing a house inspection and even went straight to my dad's bedroom, my bedroom, and my personal bathroom and closet, opening all the room doors and walked through our house inside and out and made comments about the house. Now, my dad didn't stop him because he heard it was my boyfriend's uncle and just didn't want to be rude. But the next day, my dad told me and my boyfriend about it, and my boyfriend was like, "What? I'm not even close to that uncle. He's a far relative." As for me, he is literally just a stranger because I've never met him and I just don't know him. I just felt annoyed and uncomfortable knowing a random old man went through my room and looked through my stuff without asking me or even knowing about it. I'm just so mad that I swear if I ever meet that old man again in the future, I don't know if I could be respectful to him like I usually do with older people. I mean, how on earth can someone be this rude and obnoxious? I'm honestly still mad thinking about it. Now, fast forward, and my boyfriend actually texted his sister to confront the uncle about it, and he said he was just looking for a restroom and was just checking out the house because he heard we bought it for a cheap price. But again, he could have just asked for a restroom instead of walking around and opening doors like that. And we as the homeowners were not home to let him have the permission to walk around checking it like that. Furthermore, he lives out of state and only visited for a couple of days. We do not know him like that, and he said he just wanted to see his nephew's new house. I'm honestly speechless because we can't really do anything else since it's already done, and all I can do is just get a camera and a smart door lock because what this guy did is absolutely insane. Yeah, I think I would lose my mind if someone walked into my house and just started looking through all of my rooms. Seriously, your dad should have stopped him and been like, "Wait a second, why are you going through the house?" Or at least asked him like, "Hey, what are you doing? This is weird." Because under no circumstance should somebody that you've never met before be doing that, especially if it's not your home. Like, that is really weird. So I think the only silver lining here is that your boyfriend was like, "Hey, what is your problem? Why did you do that?" Because this behavior is like super creepy. Who knows if he put a camera in your house or something like that, or like stole something that you don't know about. And the fact that the other people there were just kind of like letting this happen is also really weird. Why would you not say something to the uncle and be like, "Hey, what are you doing? Come back. You can't go through their house." So yeah, I think getting a camera of some kind or some kind of like smart lock really would be a good idea, because what this guy did, in my opinion, is super creepy. An entitled Karen tries to cut in line at the emergency room and pretends that she's partially blind just to try and get what she wants. But despite her stupid antics that she's displaying, the receptionist at this front desk doesn't take any of her garbage and ends up putting this Karen in her place in a way that I honestly will never forget. Here's what happened. So a couple of weeks ago, I was at the emergency room waiting to be seen when an old entitled Karen walks in, goes to the counter, and says that she needs to be seen immediately. The receptionist, who maintained her calm the entire time, said this Karen would have to fill out the intake forms and wait in the lobby until it's her turn. And there were about 4 or 5 of us already there ahead of her. But she insisted that she needs to be seen right away because it's an emergency. She would not elaborate on the issue, but she looked perfectly fine, or at least well enough that she could wait and argue with the staff. The receptionist does the usual "I understand, ma'am, but other people were here first" routine and tells her again that she needs to fill out the forms. Now, at this point, this Karen says that she can't see, that her vision is too blurry, so the receptionist will have to fill out the forms for her like she's some kind of secretary for this Karen. Well, she's told this isn't allowed and that she will need to sit down and fill them out herself. Now, at this point, this Karen does the usual thing and starts raising her voice so that everyone can hear how she's being disrespected and how the service here is terrible and all the other usual lines you would expect. She refuses to leave the counter as she fills out the forms and begins to cry the fakest of fake cries I've ever heard in my life. And she was doing this all while whimpering, "Nobody wants to help me." And she was saying this on repeat over and over again. She proceeds to drop all her cards and items from her purse on the ground on purpose and then takes her time to pick them up just to hold everybody up around her. Now, just as a reminder, this is the emergency room. But eventually, she takes her sweet time to fill out the form and hands it in with absolute disgust, saying again how no one wants to help out an old lady these days. She then proceeds to sit right next to me, pull out her phone, and read off of it while she waits. So clearly, this Karen was absolutely lying about being blind. I will never understand why people act like this. Like, quite legitimately, it is so weird to me. Like, I can understand if you're having an actual emergency where like you're bleeding or you have a very obvious broken bone or like somebody is actually passing away right then and there. But seriously, this is not one of those cases. This Karen wanted to get ahead of everybody else and didn't care about anyone else in line. And I mean, come on, you have to know that you're gonna be waiting in line if you go to the emergency room. Like, that's pretty common knowledge, right? At least in America where I'm from, like when you go to the emergency room, you're gonna be there for a while. Like, you are dedicating at least 8 8 hours in that hospital pretty much no matter what. So for this Karen to be so indignant and then be like, oh, well, I can't see, you're gonna have to fill it out for me. It's just so unbelievably entitled, and it's like, no, you can read, you absolutely can. You probably drove over here, you're just lying and you want to be entitled. So good for the receptionist for having just ice in her veins and being like, no, you're gonna have to fill it out yourself. Because if that were me, that Karen literally would have driven me up a wall, because that is not something that I personally handle very well in the slightest. My adult sister refuses to do any chores in the house, leaving me and my mom to clean up after her constantly. But now that I've decided to take a stand and refuse to do anything for her, I'm now receiving so much backlash that I'm honestly not sure what to do. Here's what happened. I'm 25 years old and I have a sister that's the same age who stubbornly refuses to do any real chores around the house. It's not just that she doesn't help, but she also makes significant messes and then casually expects someone else to clean up after her. Or somehow she finds someone else to blame. I thought that was nuts, so I never cleaned up for her, but my mom started getting mad at me for not doing so. And my dad also says I should just do it and I'm the one causing the problem. My mom has been very controlling to the point that I think she appointed herself in charge of chores around the house because she thinks we can't do it to her standards. But because of this, neither me or my sister learned to clean very well. But the difference is that I'm an adult and I felt guilty, and she eventually let me clean some things. The difference is that my sister comfortably expects my mom to clean up after her, and my mom started getting mad that I don't do what she does when it comes to cleaning up for my sister. I refuse to cave and do it for her until my dad gets on my case. My sister is very entitled and is constantly forgetting and being late and not doing chores all the way, and other issues with basic housework. She also has broken things around the house, left messes on the counter for others to clean up, and she acts baffled when someone tries to tell her to clean up after herself. My mom sometimes gets to telling her that she should clean, but eventually she caves and gives up, and the chores fall down to me. And I think that this is a problem because I shouldn't have to clean up after her. But also when she doesn't do something correctly or leaves a mess, when it's my turn, it's time to clean twice as hard because she messed everything up. I genuinely don't know why she does this. Maybe she doesn't feel guilty about not helping like I do, and I remember my mom making empty threats when we were kids, so I can imagine her becoming bold because there were no consequences. And I don't think we were disciplined, but I feel like as adults we should understand that we should help out. She recently got a job but doesn't even contribute to rent, and she uses that as an excuse for why she can't help. My dad wants no part in the discussion, despite him being the only one that I think can authoritatively tell her what to do, since she doesn't respect any of us. Obviously, I'd like to eventually move out, but right now I just can't do it. I feel like it's unfair that I get saddled with my sister's messes, and I'm just further disrespected by everyone involved. I tried Googling things about discipline, but the links were just all about children, and mostly by boomers upset that they can't hit their kids or whatever nowadays. I'm just tired of feeling like a maid to my own family members. It's making me dislike her more and more, and I've minimalized speaking to her because of this. But I don't even think that she cares about that. I feel like I'm Cinderella to a biological sister. What should I do? Okay, for starters, this situation sucks and I really feel for you. Like seriously, you're just trying to get by and your sister is making your life a living nightmare. The parents don't discipline her and they're like, oh my god, just do the chores for her. You're making things a problem by doing nothing. And they're shifting the blame to you for not cleaning up after your sister, when in reality, the problem is with your sister and not you. It seems like they're only going to you because you're like the easy way out, because you're at least agreeable to some extent and you're acting like an adult. But your sister, on the other hand, is acting like a teenager, and this is not fair for you in the slightest. So if I was in your shoes, I would start doubling my work hours just to try and find a new place to live. I would do everything possible to make sure I make enough money so that I can get out of that house and never look back, because what you're describing sounds like a nightmare, and I would not want to deal with that in the slightest. An entitled Karen tries to force her kid to cross 5 lanes of traffic as a form of practice from coming home from school. But once I saw that, I decided to intervene, getting this Karen in more trouble than she ever anticipated. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I currently live in a suburb in Texas. My son's primary school is on a large stretch of road, and it is 5 lanes, and the speed limit is 70 miles an hour, but during school zone hours, it's 30 miles an hour. The school sits right in the middle, and the crosswalks are at least half a mile each way, maybe more. The point is, it's not close. One's closer than the other, but it's not a brisk walk. It is definitely a trek. This road is also very popular and houses all tiers of public education. There are giant trucks, working trucks, and all manner of cars at any given hour, and it is super backed up during school hours. And so here we are. My husband is pulling out of the school, and it is a chore because of the heavy traffic. He then notices a kid right next to us on the sidewalk, showing signs of looking down these 5 lanes. lanes. My husband then says, oh, he better not be trying to cross the street. What is going on? And he hardly mentions that before slamming the pedal. The kid had stepped into the road, and my husband pulled immediately into the street to stop people on that lane. The kid then pulls back. I then jump out of the car and I yell at the kid to immediately discourage anything. And let me tell you something, this kid was not fine. I couldn't even get a word out of him, and he couldn't explain to me what he was doing. He was panicking, blubbering, and looking to the other side, and I had to hold him just so he would stop crying. He kept looking towards a cyclist on the other side of the road. She was yelling at me, and you could not hear over the 5 lanes even if you wanted to. But I figured it was his mom, so I asked her, do you want me to drive him to you? Well, she did not like that. This crazy Karen barged down those 5 lanes, thus further worsening public opinion over cyclists. She was in her entire gear, and yet she left her bike on the other side. She just tossed it down. She then stormed onto the road holding out her hand. The cars rolled to a stop, with the last one being a gigantic Texas truck whose hood was at her shoulder. This entitled Karen then looks at me and says, what is the problem here? And she actually had the audacity to ask me that. I then look at her and I say, are you his mother? And I lay down the narrative to judge her character above her preferred mode of transportation. This entitled Karen then says, yes, I am. And at this point, she started rambling, and I honestly could not believe what I was hearing, so I just cut her off. I said to her, okay, but he was trying to cross the street. And it was at this moment that this lady said something that truly blew my mind. She looked at me and said, I know, we are practicing. And let me tell you something, I can't tell you the way my heart sank to hear that this woman planned to put her 8-year-old son into this situation and fully intended for him to do so on his own, as if it takes exposure therapy to get over one's fear of getting hit by a car. Now, it's important to note that I am not a busybody. I disengage with people whose tone screams entitlement, and this really is a skill that you master in Texas. But I am, however, shamelessly confrontational, especially when it involves a child who can't defend themselves. I then turn towards my husband, who had now parked back inside the school lot, and I yell to him, oh, it's okay. They're just practicing endangering the life of a child. But he just screamed back by saying, what? Because, you know, the 5 lanes of traffic, no one can hear anything. But I just pretended that he could hear me. I said to him, I know, who does that? Not me, you know, a normal person. Because I was just being an absolute jerk right back to that lady. She had taken her son to the side, knelt and held his hands, and was rambling to him her crazy nonsense about me. Once those people go off, you can control the energy they spend on you and keep them engaged in some kind of way. I wanted her to stay there because I wasn't going to let it go. But I really needed the good guys though, those who were forced by the fires of crazy. So I stormed right into the school building and knocked on the office window, where 3 lovely women of varying levels of administrative power were already there, and I opened up dramatically again. I said to them, this is urgent. A kid tried to cross the street on his own. He almost got hit by a car. I stopped him, and his mother told me that they were practicing. Well, those women were in disbelief, as those with functioning amygdalas would typically be. They tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, but once I pointed out that she was in her cyclist gear and her bike was 5 lanes away, they started to call in the cavalry. The lady most intent on stopping her took the walkie-talkie from the other lady and stormed out. The now walkie-talkie-less lady asked me for a bit more about what happened, and I reiterated my brief experience, emphasizing the road being crossed right there where the bike lay, and she finally believed that it happened. They mostly talked to themselves about their rules for children on that road, and it was nice to hear they already had them down to specifics, as one would assume. I mean, it was the whole reason I went to go be a dirty snitch. I only knew that jaywalking was illegal in all of Texas, and I break it all the time myself on the road, but it's a special kind of demented to make a young child do it on his own, especially in Texas, where one more lane is our only understanding of infrastructure, right next to sky roads, and your tax money builds my buddy's privatized tolls. From here on, it wasn't my problem anymore. I only lingered slowly like the smug jerk that I am, just to make sure the walkie-talkie lady managed to engage the mother. When we drove past them, the mother glared daggers at me while yelling at the walkie-talkie lady. So I waved at her with a warm smile. And bless her heart, she actually thinks that she's right. Deep down though, I'm still panicked that it even happened. I know the school will handle it. They have a really good security system involving rules and volunteers because sadly, that's what we've needed to resort to since other previous incidents in the state. They will make that lady know that she's no exception to these keep the child alive rules as long as she's on their property, because anywhere else she can pretty much do whatever she wants. And honestly, that last part is what keeps me up at night. That poor kid was a mess when I talked to him. He couldn't communicate with me and he was terrified of his mother, but the least I can do is keep an eye out for him each day after school, just to make sure that this entitled Karen doesn't try that stunt ever again. That is a crazy situation. I honestly cannot believe someone would make their son do that. We're talking 5 lanes of traffic in Texas of all places. And while I've never lived in Texas, I have driven there, and let me tell you something, some people down there cannot drive in the slightest. I'm not trying to make generalizations, but seriously, it was really bad when I went there to visit friends. So when this original poster talks about their roads really being awful, I definitely believe them. But you know what? Good for the original poster and their husband for actually having some kind of sense about them to stop and make sure that this kid was all right, because that entitled Karen absolutely put their kid in danger. And I'm sure that if you didn't intervene, something bad definitely could have happened. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled managers give me some tasks that are literally impossible to do all in the same day. And despite calling for help several times, these people left me with quite literally no help. So I decided to maliciously comply by showing everybody just how impossible my task was. Here's what happened. So I used to work as a driver for a freight company, and we used to handle awkward-sized items that no other couriers would touch. We would deliver everything from coffins to tractor parts. We also had to collect things from our customers for delivery the next day. This company had a mixture of contractors and permanent drivers, and I was a relief driver. I knew most of the routes, so I covered holidays or sickness. The management of the depot consisted of a delivery manager and a collection manager. These two people didn't quite see eye to eye, as sometimes getting the stuff delivered conflicted with getting stuff collected, and their targets reflected failures in a bad way. This particular day, I had to cover a contractor's route, and I didn't know the route, so as we had to load our trucks, this took a little longer than usual. I had around 45 deliveries that day, which is predominantly high for this area. I asked my manager, who is the delivery manager, if he knew the route at all, and he replied that he did and ordered my route for me, so I was good to go, albeit a bit late. I did say that with the volume I had, I may struggle, and I asked him to keep an eye out for me, and he said okay. Well, I got to near midday, and I realized that I wasn't going to be able to complete all the deliveries, and the collections wouldn't get done either. I also noted that one of the collections was off route, and the contractor had a vehicle in that area anyways. I then called in and I spoke to my manager for the delivery side of things, and told him he had a choice of collections or deliveries. I also asked why the contractor couldn't cover the off-route collection, and I was told to call back later, and he'll see if something can be sorted out. He also said that the off-route collection would have to be done as well. I then called back later and I asked for help again, but he said there was no help available, so I gave him the option of deliveries or collections as there wasn't time to do both, but he categorically said that both had to be done. The delivery manager went home, so I called in again and I got the collection manager, and she just reiterated that there was no help at all, so either I fail the deliveries or fail the collections, and if that happened, I would have been hauled into the office the next day, so I decided to maliciously comply. I called into one of the collections and I asked what time they closed, and they told me 6:30 p.m., so I said I'd be back later, and I carried on with the deliveries, which only took me further away from that collection. At the appropriate time, I stopped delivering and I drove straight to collections, and I collected 2 small parcels, and that was it. I then drove back to where I had stopped and carried on delivering, and this cost me maybe about an hour. I finished my last delivery at 7:15 p.m., and I had a 45-minute drive back to my yard. As I was leaving the round, I got a frantic call from the collection manager. She was wondering where I was at, but I told her what happened, and I told her that I'd asked for help 4 times, and I was told I had to do everything allocated to me. So I did, and it wasn't my fault that it happened like this. Well, here's where the real trouble started. The company's trunking company is a fluid one, and it depends on trucks leaving the depot at a certain time. For our depot, the cutoff time was 7:30 p.m., and I wheeled in at just about 8 o'clock p.m. So there were 15 pissed off guys on overtime, all waiting for me to turn up, and an articulated truck waiting for these 2 parcels. This wait caused the whole trunking company to be late the next day. My routing was discussed when I got back, as it was questionable at best, and when I told the collections manager that it was the delivery manager that organized it, there was a massive blow up. There were angry emails between the delivery and collection managers, and I would imagine that the logistics team would have demanded an explanation too. So basically, many butts were kicked. The next day, no one said a word. I wasn't on that route, and going forward, at least for a little bit, they either helped out when I asked, or they just didn't get me to do as much at all. Also, as I had exceeded legal driving time, they had to make sure that I went home early for a few days, so that was a bit of a win there. The biggest trouble these guys had was that they always assumed that the drivers were after an easy day, and even when presented with the evidence, they assumed that you were still trying to fly by. But thankfully, this time bit them in the butt incredibly badly. Wow, I can't stand managers who act like this, who seriously try to be like, oh yeah, you're just trying to get out of working. But it's like, no, genius, I literally can't finish the job you gave me. You gave me an impossible task and this is not my problem. So I just love the fact that the original poster maliciously complied and basically said, oh, okay, you're gonna give me something impossible to do? Congratulations, I'm coming back to work late. And the fact that this put everybody behind is just so funny to me, because this literally is the consequences of your manager's decisions. Because if they were just a little bit more reasonable, all of this quite literally could have been avoided. An entitled bully ruins my birthday party by forcing me and my friends to follow his every command. But once things started catching on fire and really getting out of hand, my birthday party very quickly was canceled. Here's what happened. Okay, to set the scene, it was my 8th birthday, and it was my first birthday in our new house. It was the early 70s, and my parents were first-time homeowners, and they wanted my first birthday in the new house to be one that I always would remember. So they decided to throw a birthday party for me, inviting my cousins and all the neighborhood kids as well. A few of my aunts, one of my grandmothers, and a few neighborhood moms were there too. All the kids were down in the basement with no grown-ups to supervise, and one of the kids had an older brother who was there as well. He was put in charge by the grown-ups, and we were sternly told by the grown-ups that the older brother, who we will call Jeff, was the person in charge, and we were to follow Jeff's orders when there were no adults downstairs with us. Jeff was much bigger than the rest of us, and as soon as the grown-ups were out of the room, he would start bullying the younger kids, making us do all sorts of mischief, or else he would punch us. He would tell us to do something, and if we said no, he would make this great fist in front of your face. And to us younger kids, it looked like the fist from the Incredible Hulk. He had us saying swear words whenever an adult would come down the stairs, and he wrote swear words on the cement walls with chalk and made other kids take the blame. We were all given paper cups, and he made all of us hold out our paper cups, and then used a dart to poke several holes in the bottom of each kid's cup. My mother and aunt came downstairs and said, okay kids, who want some Kool-Aid? And not sensing the normal enthusiasm that a bunch of 6 to 8-year-olds would normally have for Kool-Aid, my mother thought that something was wrong, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. She looked at our blank faces for a moment and said, oh, for God's sakes, hold out your cups, it's red Kool-Aid, for crying out loud. This is everybody's favorite. Well, hesitantly, we held out our cups. My mother comes over to the first kid, raises the clear glass pitcher of red Kool-Aid, and starts to pour. Well, the Kool-Aid went straight in the cup, then out the bottom through the dart-punched holes, like a lawn sprinkler with red dye in the water. There was red Kool-Aid everywhere, on the table cover, all over the floor, on the kid, and on my mother. The older kid then howled with laughter as my mother scolded the poor helpless kid standing there with Kool-Aid stained pants and a formerly white t-shirt that most definitely would never be any shade of white ever again. My mother then said, Lord Almighty above, why would you do such a thing? She then moved on to the next kid, and wouldn't you guess it, the same thing happens. She then checked everyone else's cup, and everyone except for the big kid had holes in their cup. He slowly sipped and savored his Kool-Aid in front of the rest of our jealous eyes, like it was sweet nectar being sipped from a holy chalice. My mother and aunt stormed back upstairs and came down a few minutes later with hot dogs, their footsteps sounding like peeling Velcro, as they stepped into the many sticky, dried red Kool-Aid puddles lying around the floor like a sinister minefield. Then they went back upstairs only to come rushing back down a few moments later after they overheard a chaos that had erupted downstairs. When they got downstairs to see what the commotion was about, it looked as if there was an explosion in a condiment factory, as the walls, floor, and ceiling had become a canvas for a condiment mosaic. And that's when the food fight had broken out, which is something that Jeff had ordered us to do. My mother and aunt issued the riot act and gave us our final warning, as the older kid they put in charge stood innocently in the corner with an evil smirk on his face. Well, back upstairs they went, and they came downstairs a few minutes later with a birthday cake and placed it on the table with very stern looks on their faces. They were not going to put up with the slightest hint of foolishness. They were absolutely done. Well, we took the visual hint and put on our best behavior as we made our way in an orderly fashion to the wretched-looking table that had Kool-Aid stains and condiment smears so that we could try and get a piece of cake. We sat there and ate our cake and behaved very well while we were doing so. My mother and aunt then went back upstairs and left us alone again, but this time someone lit the table on fire. Well, my mother and aunt came roaring down the stairs again, telling everyone to get out and go home, as they became volunteer firefighters in that moment. And as you can probably guess, that was the last ever birthday party for me that my parents held at my house. Wow, what a crazy circumstance. Like seriously, Jeff is one of those bad kids that should not have been in charge. And I feel really bad for you and your friends, because I'm sure that none of you wanted this. You definitely just wanted to have like a normal birthday party and spend time with your friends, but here comes Jeff literally lighting the house on fire. Like, that kid is seriously insane. That is not okay. You can't just light the table on fire in the middle of a birthday party. Not to mention the Kool-Aid incident and them having a food fight. Like, for me, if I was the mom or the aunt in this situation, opinion, the food fight and the Kool-Aid incident would have been like my last straw. There's no way I would put up with that, like not for a second. So hopefully you didn't have any more interactions with Jeff growing up, because that guy sounds like a nightmare, and I'm willing to bet that the older Jeff got, the worse he probably was. Am I the jerk for pressing charges against my sister after she stole over $1,500 from my bank account? Because right now my parents are furious with me, saying that they could have paid it back if I just gave them time. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old female, and my 26-year-old sister called me and asked if she could stay with me for the week, as she said that she missed me and we were both free. And when she asked this, I did say yes because I missed her as well. We're both college students, and she's in her final year, and I'm in my second year, and we live in different states. My sister came down and slept on my couch, as I have a one-bedroom apartment. Monday and Tuesday was great. We went out together, did some shopping, and had some sisterly time. Wednesday came along and I had to go to work, and so I asked her if she's alright staying in the apartment by herself, and she said yes. While on my lunch break, I was searching for my credit card. My backpack has a specific section that's hidden away where I put my valuables in, such as my cell phone, my wallet, or my keys. I searched and my wallet wasn't there. I texted my sister and I asked if she had seen my wallet, and she replied no and said that she'd look for it. I do have Apple Pay, so I still can purchase some lunch. I got home and she said she found it on top of my sock drawer, and I was suspicious as I went in there yesterday morning and I knew it wasn't there. When I got home, I logged into my online banking and I saw that over $1,500 had been withdrawn across 2 accounts. I had strong suspicions that it was my sister, and I told her that I'm calling the police as someone's withdrawn money from my accounts. Well, it didn't take long for her to confess that she took my wallet and used my money. Now, it's important to know that my sister is a golden child who never is in trouble. I was sick and tired of her getting away with everything, and not only that, but it's money that I can't afford to lose. I told her that I'm calling the police and that I want to press charges, but my sister kept crying and screaming and begging to not call the police, as she said she would have my money in 24 hours time. Now, as I was speaking to the dispatcher on the phone, my sister was trying to grab the phone from my hand. After she failed to do so, she ran to my room, called our parents, and whilst I was on the phone to 911, my parents were constantly trying to call me. As soon as I hanged up, within 1 second, they called me back, and the dispatcher said they were sending police officers to my address. As I hung up and waited for the dispatcher to arrive, I saw 30 missed calls from my parents, so I decided to turn my phone off all the way up until the officer got here, as they just kept calling me. The police officer arrived and detained my sister. They took down my statement and I showed them my evidence, and they said because she stole over $1,500 that this is considered a felony and they will be charging her. I then called my parents afterwards and I explained the situation, and once I did, they started shouting at me down the phone, telling me that I shouldn't have called the police as they would have just paid it back within an hour, and that I've ruined her life. So honestly, I really need to know, am I the jerk for calling the police on my sister after she blatantly stole money from me? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk, and I cannot believe that your parents are acting that way. Let's get a few things straight. You did not ruin your sister's life. She quite literally ruined hers. She's the one that stole money out of your wallet and not the other way around. Like, how can anyone possibly defend this? There is no good excuse for that, and I am sincerely appalled that your parents are like, wait, don't do this, you're gonna ruin her life. And it's like, wait a second, you're not even mad that she stole money from me, but instead you're just going to enable this behavior? Like, seriously, what's going on here? This is not okay. Because I don't care who you are, you can't just take that kind of money from someone and not expect some kind of consequence. So the fact that your parents would try to flip this on you and be like, oh, this is your fault that she's gonna be in trouble, and basically imply that you're ruining her life is so unbelievably disrespectful, it's not even funny. And this also makes me believe that maybe this is the only reason your sister came to your apartment. Like, this was probably her plan the entire time. She didn't want to visit you, she just wanted a free moment away from you so that she could rob you blind. And the way your parents reacted makes them complicit in all of this, because I think it's the principle of the matter that really counts in this situation. This is not about you getting your money back as soon as possible. This is about your sister robbing you and your parents somehow being okay with it. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. Your parents are insane for trying to defend her, and in my opinion, I think your sister's getting exactly what she deserves. An entitled Karen demands that I do her job every morning at the hotel that we work at, claiming that if I didn't do exactly as she said, she would personally get me fired. But after I refused to give in to this stupid Karen's demands, this Karen actually tried to get me fired, only for her to get fired herself. And I've honestly never been happier to see somebody go in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so I had a coworker who we will call Bessie, who had been working at this hotel for 15 years as the breakfast attendant attendant for the little buffet we have here. If you've ever been to a Holiday Inn Express or a Best Western, then you have a very clear idea of what I'm talking about. In all of those years, Bessie has been able to bully every night auditor into doing half the breakfast setup before she arrives. Bessie had them setting out or refilling cold and dry food, as well as condiments, plates, plasticware, and all sorts of other stuff at 3 in the morning. If it wasn't all done when she came in at 4, there would be all sorts of yelling, screaming, and threats of being fired. She had convinced the 22-year-olds working overnight that she had that control when she didn't even manage her department. It was the sales manager that did the breakfast scheduling and ordering, and the houseman was in charge of taking out the kitchen trash. So Bessie only had to do half of her actual job on any given morning. Well, that is until I showed up. The management company that owns the hotel hired me to run night audit at 2 of their locations. And at no other hotel I've ever worked at in the last 19 years had night audits doing anything like this. Most brands would have night audits make new coffee during the shift and maybe put out any of the breakfast to-go bags. So I just run it like any other night audit and I just make new coffee at 3 in the morning. When Bessie came in, she tried telling me all the stuff I was supposed to do, but I told her that none of that makes any sense. Leaving food out for 3 hours before breakfast is hazardous. So is turning on the waffle irons and oven. It's just energy waste and fire hazards all over. Bessie then tells me that I'm being too smart and I need to watch my tone speaking to elders. After that morning when Bessie comes in, she throws her tantrum screaming about how lazy young people are and how nobody wants to work these days. Like she's just walking around the breakfast pantry and buffet screaming about me as she does her own job. Meanwhile, another coworker who we will call Melanie that covers Bessie on the weekend has absolutely no problem with how I operate. She says that none of Bessie's rules make sense to her at all either. For 3 weeks, this goes on before Bessie decides to involve the hotel manager. And she was all talk about how she knows him, she's been here longer than anybody else, and how she's gonna get me fired. Well, this is where my first-hand knowledge ends, and I start working off triple verified gossip. On Tuesday morning, Bessie started making demands of the general manager. She said stuff like, either he stays or I go. And this was her opening riff, but this guy basically said that's not going to happen. So he counters by saying that if she can't handle breakfast anymore, then she can move to housekeeping or laundry. Well, apparently this sent Bessie into a rage because she yelled and then started crying before walking out. Then she returned an hour later more composed, speaking to the hotel manager behind closed doors, and then she left crying again. Well, tonight when I clocked in, Bessie was off the schedule. Melanie was on all week for breakfast, and the second shift told me that Bessie was fired. So honestly, farewell to Bessie, because trust me, you will not be missed. Yeah, that's a really funny way of being not only incredibly entitled, but also super selfish. Who in their right mind would try to lie to their coworkers and be like, oh yeah, I could get you fired if you don't do my job? And that's all that's going on here, by the way. This lady's too lazy to do her own job, so she's like, oh, I'm gonna make you do my job or else you're gonna get fired. I have the power to do that. And that is such a toxic thing to say. Like seriously, in my opinion, if anybody that you work with makes that kind of veiled threat, where they're basically putting your employment on the line, then in my opinion, it's time to go to HR or it's time to find another job. Because that is definitely not a place you want to work. Because either they really can fire you, or this is one of those situations where like they're just making it up and they're trying to use fear tactics to keep you in line. And that is such a ridiculous thing to do. So truly, good for you for standing up for yourself and refusing to give in to this stupid idiot's demands. Because her awful attitude and her selfish demeanor quite literally is the reason she got fired. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled aunt, whom I have barely spoken to in the last 20 years, demanded that my sister and I use our inheritance to buy her a house. And I'm honestly still amazed by this level of entitlement. Here's what happened. Okay, so I had to suffer through a holiday recently with my aunt, and I only put up with her presence so I could get to know my cousin better, and this made me annoyed all over again about something she did a few years ago. Now, my mom passed away from depression back in 2020, if you know what I mean. As a consequence of this, my sister and I received a large inheritance from our grandfather's estate, and this was enough money to buy a house, and my dad sorted out the details of the taxes we had to pay on the inheritance for us. We offered him a third share to take care of himself, but he stated that he didn't want to touch the money. Now, the aunt in question who I went on holiday with, we'll call her Rachel for the sake of the story, she is an avid socialist, while the other aunt, who we will call Tilly, has led a hippie lifestyle for decades. They're both in their 60s and they are my dad's sisters. Because of their chosen lifestyles, they don't have much in the way of savings, but they are adults. choice. They chose their lifestyle, and they had to live with the consequences of that. A year or two after my mother passed away, Tilly had some sort of crisis where her rent increased, and she wasn't sure how she would be able to afford her place or her accommodations. And I'm not really sure of all the details, but what I do know is that Rachel, my other aunt, reached out to my dad with the suggestion that we use our inheritance, which we inherited from the other side of my family, so that we could buy Tilly a house, which she would then leave to us in her will, meaning that I would have to wait until my middle age to get access to my own money to buy a house with. And this is also a person we've barely spoken to in the last 20 years. The audacity of this was absolutely amazing, and this made the holiday even more annoying, as I feel certain that their attempts to get closer to us have partly to do with our money. Rachel's behavior on the holiday was also pretty irritating, as she was asking inappropriately personal questions, acting incredibly childish, and so many other things. And this also set my sister and I to start arguing as well. And so, with all things considered, we are 100% never going on a holiday with her ever again. Yeah, that is absolutely ridiculous, and it's why, in my opinion, you never tell anybody about your money. Like, this is one of those circumstances where it sounds like everybody knew about it, but seriously, people like this who are like, oh, just buy a house for your aunt you never talked to. Like, that is crazy to me, and that is so intrusive. Just because you might have the money doesn't mean everyone else is obligated to it. You are not everyone else's personal ATM machine. Like, that is not how this works. So yeah, if I was in your shoes, I would never go back on a holiday with them ever again, because their behavior was absolutely atrocious. Am I the jerk for not allowing my grandparents to bring an estranged sibling to my wedding whom I have never met before in my life? Here's what happened. I'm a 26-year-old male, and I was raised by my dad after my mom became a deadbeat and walked out on us when I was born. She had zero to do with me from the time she left when I was a week old. No child support, no calls, didn't even check with her parents to see if I was okay. Her parents, who are my grandparents, were present throughout my life, but they weren't always people that I was close to. And this had to do with them bringing up my mother, even though they knew that it upset me and frustrated me. They wanted me to keep an open mind that she'd grow up one day and would hopefully regret leaving me. Even when I told them that I didn't want to hear about her, there were occasions that they mentioned her. After about 3 years, she reached back out to them, and they were excited, and they hoped that I would join them in reuniting with her. But I have as much interest now as I did back when I was a kid, which is zero for those who are wondering. They told me she had a daughter who was 4 years old at the time, and I told them that did not change anything for me. They told me, well, she's your mom, and I replied back that she is their daughter, and their daughter was no parent to me. I told them that she had not cared about me for 23 years, and we weren't going to pretend she suddenly started to care. I then had to take a small break from my grandparents because they mentioned that my mom had lost an infant son not too long before reaching out, and that it was what ultimately made her decide to reconnect. After 3 months, my grandparents apologized for pressuring me, and they said they would no longer push it, and it really looked like they were going to stay true to their word. However, they revealed that they had not been entirely true to their word, and they were telling their granddaughter about me, and promised her a relationship with me, and made her believe that she could come to my wedding. And they told me this after I sent them an invite to my wedding, and they realized that they as a couple didn't get a +1. I told them that I didn't want the girl attending my wedding, and I said that I would actually want to meet her first and figure out contact through them if I was actually interested, but guess what? I'm not. They argue that she's still a sibling, and I could have a relationship with her through them, and that there is no reason to even have contact with my mother. But I told them that I don't want contact with this child. I told them she might be biologically my sibling, but in terms of being my family, she's not, and I have zero desire to change that. They again said that she's my sibling, and I have no others, and I would be helping to break her heart. But I very clearly said that I'm not letting them bring their daughter's other child to my wedding just because they messed up and made promises that they had no right to make. I told them that they would have to fix it, but she was not coming just to spare her feelings, because it will be a lot if she comes face to face with me and can see how disinterested I am in her. Well, they told me to think of the child, and how my words were so distancing instead of kind and inclusive. So am I the jerk for not wanting this kid to show up to my wedding? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk at all. Your grandparents are crossing a line, and there is no good excuse for that. They're literally bringing in a sibling to your wedding of all places, and you haven't even met this person, and you probably don't even know their name. Like, there's no family connection here. You have it 100% right. And the fact that your grandparents were like, oh yeah, you're gonna have a great relationship with the original poster, and for them to do that at your wedding of all places is just insane to me. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. The way your grandparents acted is completely out of line, and in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would be reconsidering even having them in my wedding in the first place, because clearly they cannot be trusted. trusted. Am I the jerk for not consenting to my husband's twin brother moving in with us? Because after finding out he would need constant care, I feel that all my plans of having a family are completely thrown out the window. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My husband and I got married less than a year ago. For most of our relationship, one of our biggest issues and cause of arguments has been his family. My husband has a large family, and if you include all of his half-siblings, he is one of 12 children. This includes his twin brother Sam, who has autism, with one of his younger brothers also having autism but is higher functioning. Previously, before we married, one of my husband's brothers moved in with us for about 8 months. I knew going into it that this was going to be temporary, so I said okay. However, I made clear then that his family members staying with us wasn't really ideal for me. Both of my husband's autistic brothers have spent most of their lives living with their grandfather. However, back in 2018, they decided it was no longer appropriate for Sam to live with their grandfather due to his high care needs. Sam moved in with their oldest sister and has lived there ever since. Sam is mostly nonverbal, and although he has some independent skills, he needs help with everyday things and shouldn't really be left home alone for more than an hour. My sister-in-law's youngest child left home early last year, and she's now planning to move in with her eldest son and her grandkids. And she can only do this if she can find a new home for Sam. Recently, my husband came to me and told me that he wanted Sam to move in with us. He argued that we have the space, and he has the time to look after Sam. He thinks as Sam's twin, it's his duty to be the one to take Sam in. He also said that their sister is going to be spending a lot of time with Sam. Now, I feel bad, but I told him I didn't want Sam to live with us. This would be a long-term living arrangement, and it would not be temporary like his other brother. I told him that he should have told me well before marriage that he would be wanting his brother to live with us. And so I feel because he didn't, it's my right to say no. This is a big change that will affect the rest of our foreseeable future and all of our future plans of starting a family. Fast forward, and yesterday, my husband and I were at my sister-in-law's home discussing Sam's future, and I told her I didn't want Sam to move in with us. I suggested to her that if she stayed in-house to look after Sam, my husband and I can try to be a bigger help to her. She then became annoyed with me after that and complained that she's been looking after her younger siblings since kindergarten, became a teen mom, and raised 7 kids of her own, and she can now finally have the time to do what she wants. I then expressed my opinion that she was being cold to Sam, who is incredibly attached to her, and that I could see him getting very depressed living away from her. Well, she got mad at me after that. Although my husband said he would only take Sam in with my consent, I can tell that he's going to hold it against me if I don't. So am I being the jerk here? I think they are being very short-sighted about Sam's future, and all the siblings have flat out refused him going into a home. What should I do? No, you are absolutely not the jerk. Your husband sucks, and so does the rest of his family. This sounds like one of those cases where yes, Sam absolutely needs professional help. Not saying that other people can't step up and take care of him, but that option is very clearly falling apart. So to that end, all of these people suck. They should have taken care of this a long time ago. And it's so funny to me that this sister-in-law is like, wow, you need to take him in. Like, she's not even giving you a choice almost. She's trying to like gaslight you and be like, well, now I could do whatever I want. Basically confirming that yes, this is a burden, and no, she's never going to visit Sam ever again. She is 100% going to drop him off at your house, and that's going to be the end of it. So in my opinion, I think you are completely justified in saying no, you are not taking him in. But also, the biggest red flag in my opinion is your husband. This guy kept you in the dark for your entire relationship and all throughout you getting married and getting ready to be married. Like, this guy completely pulled a fast one on you and said, oh yeah, I want my brother to move in. And by the way, my brother needs a lot of care, which all of that is fine. Like, legitimately, that is fine. This is what family does. But to spring that on your spouse without talking about this before you got married, in my opinion, is a massive red flag. Like, was he planning this from the very beginning? Did he know for like a long time that this was probably going to happen? Like, that's kind of what it seems like to me, and that is so unfair for you. Like, I wouldn't even put it past him that he only had his brother move in for 8 months just so he could try to test the water to see if you would be okay with it. Like, all of this is super sketchy, and I don't blame you for being angry, because I know if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. An entitled Karen mouths off at a server working at a restaurant after she's told that there's going to be a 20-minute wait until they can finally see new customers. But as karma would have it, this server was not going to take that for a second, as this server kicked this lady out of the restaurant in a way that I've never seen before in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so I went to breakfast with a friend to celebrate their kids going back to school. We walk into the restaurant and are told their computers are down and only 2 servers are working just now, so everything is a bit slow. Apologies get thrown around, but eventually we just take a seat and we tell them that we're not in a rush and that they don't have to worry about about us. And we just chat and eventually have a lovely leisurely breakfast. Well, as we're eating, I hear the staff telling folks coming in the same thing, that they're taking down credit card numbers because the computers are down, that their ordering system is down, and that they're understaffed. And they said, please be patient. We hope to have everything up running smoothly very soon. Now, most people are like us. They're not in a hurry. They're smiling and having a cup of coffee, and they're just taking it easy. Well, that all ends when the entitled Karen of this story walks in. Firstly, she had to wait about 2 minutes until somebody came up to try and help her out. And apparently that was enough to already put her in a mood. Either that or she's just perpetually pissed off. Because when the server came over to tell her the story, she also told her that it would be about 20 minutes until they can seat her, as they've got all that they can handle right now. Well, this entitled Karen jumps down this poor server's throat. She starts screaming, "No, there is not a 20-minute wait. There are plenty of tables open." And then the funniest thing happens that I honestly never expected. I kid you not. The server blinked, looked at this woman, took a breath and said, "You know what? You're right. We are actually closed. Thank you. Have a good day now." And then she shooed the woman around and out the door. And you know what? I nearly cheered out loud. She told the old gentleman who came up to work the seating booth to tell anyone else that they were closed for the next little bit until they could catch up or get the systems running again. And honestly, my friend and I just smiled throughout the rest of our meal because I absolutely love a side of karma with my eggs and coffee in the morning. That is honestly such a great way to handle some stupid entitled Karen, or literally anybody who acts that way. Like, just because there's tables open at a restaurant doesn't mean they can accommodate you at the drop of a hat. That is so obnoxious and incredibly rude. And it's also really amazing to me that someone would have the actual guts to talk to some staff like that. You do know these people are serving you food, right? They can also turn you away at the door and just be like, "Okay, you gotta go," which is exactly what this server did. Like, that is such a smart thing to do. And with all things considered, I'm kind of surprised they didn't do that sooner. I mean, your systems are down and you can barely function as a restaurant at the moment. Like, even running all those credit cards later on when your computers are back up, that's gonna take well over 3 hours just to get it all sorted out, if not longer. So good for the server for standing up for themselves and getting rid of this weird entitled Karen, because you know for a fact that if she got seated, she absolutely would have caused problems. An entitled old jerk has a meltdown in Chipotle after he started viciously screaming at a child who was making too much noise. And I'm honestly still blown away by how angry this guy got. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened several weeks ago at my local Chipotle. I'm in line and I had just begun to order, and I vaguely hear a toddler in the dining room, and a quick glance places this kid at about 18 months old. And then suddenly I hear this huge commotion, and as I look over, this old entitled jerk starts screaming over and over again that this kid needs to shut up. And he screams the phrase "shut her up" over and over again, like maybe 15 times. And I'm honestly shocked that a grown man is behaving like this. An employee, who I can only assume is the manager, is trying to calm him down. I can't hear what she's saying, but the old man is screaming, wondering why no one's telling the child to be quiet. I remember then that I'm trying to order, so I just go on with my business. Really, the worst part was that the old man was sitting with what appeared to be his wife, and the look on her face will forever haunt my dreams for years to come. She sat there very still and very quiet. She appeared to not really be aware of her surroundings. She just looked off into space with the saddest look I've ever seen. This poor woman has probably been married to this wretched man for decades, and in a time when if you were married, you stayed married no matter what. Now, for reference, the little girl in question was not screaming, maybe just talking a little bit above normal levels. And yes, of course, many assumptions were made because this was a 3-minute snapshot into their lives. But I'm honestly still blown away by this guy's behavior, as well as the fact that this guy would make this much of a scene. It is crazy to me that people can act like this and not get kicked out of a restaurant. Like, seriously, where's like the backbone on this manager? It doesn't take much to stand up and be like, "Okay, sir, you gotta go." Like, a crying baby is literally the last thing on our minds, because this guy is literally screaming over and over again, "Shut her up." Like, the kid is what, 18 months old? Like, seriously, it's not that big of a deal. And the original poster even clarified that the kid was not even being that loud. Like, maybe being just a little bit loud considering like the environment, but I'm willing to bet that other people were being loud too, like it wasn't just this one baby. It really seems like this old guy just said, "Okay, there's a baby screaming, I don't like that. So my only solution to get peace and quiet is to scream louder." Like, okay, buddy, sure, that's the answer. Like, what is that guy thinking? That's not gonna solve a single thing. And you know what? After the description of the woman in the story, I also feel bad for this guy's wife. Like, just imagine being with someone who is this comfortable making this much of a scene in public. I would personally be horrified if I had someone like that in my life, because when I eat out, I just want to sit in peace and not have to deal with anybody, let alone have some kind of confrontation in public, like good lord, because this guy's behavior was absolutely unacceptable. An entitled coworker training to work at my restaurant tries to throw me under the bus as her trainer for not training her properly on doing her job. But after dealing with her awful attitude, as well as her entitled behavior, I decided that enough was enough, as I went out of my way to expose this lady for the lazy jerk that she truly was. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I'm a 20-year-old female and I worked at a semi-fine dining steak place as a lead trainer and a server. One of my trainees, let's call her Karen, was 22 years old and had no experience at all. And this is fine, I'm totally down to teach anybody. She was great in the beginning, and she just needed to work on her hospitality. She shadowed me for the first day before she was allowed to give it a go. I have to be tied at the hip with my trainee basically, and Karen absolutely hated this. By the third shift, we were swapping pitching to tables, and I was giving her constructive criticism very softly, since I could tell that she would take it to heart. I had to explain to her that I need to follow her everywhere, maybe except for the bathroom of course, and she told me, I can do this job. It is not that hard, just leave me alone. And then she bolted away. I found her again and softly explained why I needed to be by her. She then scoffed and ran off to the bathroom. During this time, we do surveys if the customers would like to say their input on the trainees. So I talked to a table that I had, and they said that she was extremely rude to them when I wasn't around, and that half of our stuff came out really late. Now, when I heard this, I apologized, and I told them that I would be taking over their service, and then I just moved on. Once Karen left the bathroom, I spoke to her about what the table said, and she responded by saying, it is not my fault other servers won't run my food, and it's not my fault that the table didn't know what they wanted. And it's like, are you serious? It's literally in the training to recommend dishes to these people. You were standing around in the kitchen doing nothing when your food was simply waiting to be ran. Not to mention she could have asked for help since I was shadowing her, but she decided just to run off. And this ended up repeating for the rest of the night. At the end of the third shift, I sent her home. I spoke to my boss about my concerns, as I was just about to get a talking to for not being tied to the hip with her. My boss had a moment where he thought to himself, oh, that's insane. And we agreed for me to take a different trainee and see if she passes her audit. Well, I heard from my other trainer that she was a nightmare to work with, and she would constantly talk garbage about me behind my back. Now, I wasn't too bothered. It is truly not my problem anymore. That is, until her audit came around. I think she may have forgot that I warned her that I run all the audits with a manager as long as I'm working that shift, and her audit so happened to be on my shift since I worked 5 days a week, and I run them with no bias and only strictly based on points they have to hit that they learned in training. During the audit, she has to treat us like actual customers, and slowly but surely, she crashed and burned, and I constantly had to dock her points. I spoke with my manager to see if she was worth keeping and explained my experience training her, and all my manager said was absolutely not. So we both spoke with her afterwards and told her that she can try again if she studies, but if she fails again, she can't work here. But once we said that, she proceeds to blame me for not being trained properly, all before I asked my manager to pull up the camera feed. And I also asked if I can pull aside my other trainer to show that what she was saying is not true. Well, all of her accusations basically just got shut down, and it's safe to say that Karen did not end up working there. Semi-fine dining and fine dining is not for everybody. I tried to be gentle in my training, but maybe she's better off at a more casual restaurant. I really tried to prepare her the best that I could, but some people just simply aren't receptive. Yeah, I think you guys dodged a train on this one because it does not sound like this lady would have been very nice to work with. Like if she's being rude to customers at a semi-fine dining restaurant, or even a restaurant that's somewhat upscale, then trust me, this is not someone you want as a coworker. And the fact that she tried to be like, oh, I'm not doing well because it's your fault. Meanwhile, she's not doing her job and she's running off to the bathroom, all because you're trying to train her. Like seriously, this is not that hard. All she had to do was be agreeable, be nice, and literally just do as you're told, and she probably could have passed this with flying colors. Like it's not that hard to just be nice and fake your way through it and get the job, like seriously. So good for you and your manager for putting your foot down and telling her, no, you definitely can't work here. Because based on her attitude alone, that would have been an absolute nightmare to deal with on a daily basis. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my twin brother to stop contacting me after he started only calling me asking for money? Here's what happened. I'm a 34-year-old female, and I have a twin brother, and growing up we were super close. And we both had boys, and we were super excited to raise our boys together. But when he got married, he distanced himself from our side of the family. He got married when he was 21 years old to the mother of his son. And he said said he did this because of who I married. Now, I've been with my husband for 13 and a half years, but he has literally never met him, and he would never even take the chance to meet him. Well, my twin brother finally said that it was because of my husband's job of a truck mechanic for semis. To me, it didn't matter what kind of job my husband had. I love my husband, and that's why I married him. So anyways, my twin brother didn't talk to me for about 3 years, so I stopped trying to reach out myself. Well, my husband, about 5 years ago, switched his careers around, and he now makes over $140,000 a year. At first, my husband was making about $90,000 a year, but he's gotten promotions and he's gotten some raises. My twin brother got a divorce 2 years ago, and my dad was just so proud of my husband that my dad was mentioning to my twin brother how well he's doing in his new career. My husband worked his butt off. He decided to go back to school, and that's how he switched careers after graduating. My twin brother started contacting me again, and at first it was just talking about normal things, but then he started asking for money just here and there. However, I would always tell him no because we have kids of our own, and we have our own bills to take care of. About 6 months ago, he was only contacting me about asking for money, especially after he found out my husband got a promotion and a raise. But still, I would always say no. Then I would just stop answering his phone calls altogether because I knew he wanted money. Now, about 2 weeks ago, my twin brother called me again, but this time I decided to answer, and trust me, I know I really shouldn't have. When I picked up the phone, he asked me for $500 because he was getting evicted, but I told him I cannot help him for money and to please stop asking me for money. If you just wanted to call and talk to me, that would have been just fine. Well, my twin brother then started yelling at me. He told me that my husband makes more than enough money to help out my twin brother every once in a while. I told my twin brother absolutely not. We have kids of our own and we have bills of our own that we need to pay, and we have other things that we need to take care of ourselves. He then said that I'm obviously not a very good twin sister because I won't help him out. And after he said that, I told him to never contact me again until he would get his crap together and realize that he needed to stop asking for money. After that, he got upset with me and then he hung up the phone. And I have since blocked him on everything, including social media. I don't know if I did the right thing, and this has really hurt me deep down having to do this. My husband said I did the right thing, but he understands how hard it is for me to do that. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk. This guy not only blocks you out of your life because of your husband's job, but then he comes back later and says, oh, your husband's making more money now? Either give me $500 or you're not a good twin sister. Like, that is such an awful thing to do to a sibling. It's not even funny. And the fact that he would really try to guilt trip you of all people after you tried to have some kind of connection with him is just so insane to me. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. Your twin brother is absolutely out of line, and I definitely think you have it right. If this guy wants to call you, it better be about anything except for money, because that conversation is absolutely off the table. Am I the jerk for not bending over backwards for my parents in order to babysit my 18-year-old sister? Because right now they are very angry with me, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 32-year-old female, and my grandparents and grandmothers are going on a week-long cruise starting at the end of the month, and they haven't mentioned anything about keeping tabs on my younger sister, but tonight my mom texted me saying, I really need for you to watch your sister. Well, I told her that I'm going back to work literally at the beginning of next month, and I will be gone from 5:30 in the morning, and I won't be back in town until 5 o'clock p.m. Then I have a boot camp that I'm dedicated to. I told her maybe she can stay with me so I can see her in the evenings and check in with her during the day, but apparently that just isn't good enough. Maybe I was a bit blunt over text messaging, but I honestly just don't understand what she wants me to do. My sister is 18 years old, by the way, and I physically can't be home until 5 o'clock p.m. My parents called me and I said that she can stay with me so I can see her in the evenings and she won't have to sleep anywhere alone. But then my mom said, oh, so she's just gonna be alone? And I said, for most of the day, yes. She then said to me, okay, wow. And my dad was in the background yelling at me. Now, I am a people pleaser, and my parents put a lot of their responsibilities on me as a child. They are used to me bending over backwards for them and putting their needs and my sister's needs well before mine. And this is probably the first boundary I've ever set. Anyway, this whole situation pissed me off, and I said, this is wild, make it make sense to me, which made them even more mad. I then got off the phone and I blocked them for the night because what I'm not going to do is let them stress me out. I mean, I came a long way with my mental health for this. So am I the jerk for not doing more and snapping at them? Is there something more that I could have done? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk. Like, seriously, do they not realize that you have a job and a life of your own? They not only did not tell you in advance that they wanted you to do this, but they also tried to spring it on you and guilt trip you into what, quitting your job? job? Do they really expect you to sit at home with your sister and like babysit her? She is 18 years old after all. Like, this is honestly not that big of a deal. She really should be able to take care of herself. And if she can't, then yeah, just go ahead and stay with you for like the duration of their stupid cruise. So for your mom and dad to be like, I can't believe you're letting her stay by herself all day. Like, that is literally just nonsense in my opinion. And that is completely neglectful to your work. So if I was in your shoes, I would have reacted the same way, because what they're asking of you, in my opinion, is completely insane. Today, I quit my job as a server after working in the business for over 30 years. Because after dealing with some shady practices from my managers, I decided that enough was enough and that I was not going to be thrown around at their whim. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of backstory, I've been in the service industry for over 30 years, and I really love it. It brings me into close contact with all sorts of people from all walks of life, and that is something that I really value. I generally love people, and I always see the best in them until they show me different. But this story isn't about that. It's about the business side of all of it. Up until today, I worked for a chain pizza restaurant. It is in a college town and should be fairly busy all the time, but it isn't. The only reason I could find for this was that the pizzas are stupidly expensive. We're talking $30 for one pizza, and a lot of the servers I worked with just didn't care. During my day shift of serving, if I didn't get cut for lack of business, I would take home maybe $40. For the night shift on the weekend, with about 6 servers on, I would maybe make $100, and that's a big maybe. My living expenses are exorbitant, and money's not really an issue anyway, so the low pay was acceptable. While I was working hard, it was only a few hours a day, and it gave me plenty of time to pursue my real passion and what I went to school for, which was music. Recently, the company I worked for switched to a different payment system, which means that all my tips were collected and then sent to me via direct deposit the next day. Now, at first I was a bit bummed out because I like having instant cash every single day, and in the right establishment, that has been very lucrative for me. I also understood why the company was doing it. Keeping a large sum of money on hand to pay out credit card tips can be rough, and perhaps even dangerous for the business if it's robbed or something else. They officially rolled it out on Monday, so on Monday, I turned in all of my monies for my day shift and my night shift, and on Tuesday morning, they direct deposited $87 into my account. And I think to myself, okay, cool. Now I don't have to go to the bank all the time to deposit my cash. Except there was one problem. That was more money than they should have paid me out. When I asked what was going on with that, none of the store managers could explain to me why, or even how it all had gone wrong. My general manager informed me that while the company was probably going to ask for that money back, he knew that it was their mistake, and they wouldn't make me or the other 2 servers pay that money back. Well, on Wednesday, I walked into work, and I was told immediately that I had to pay back over $50 because they had messed up and paid me too much. And you know what? I just let out a laugh. I responded by saying, well, that's not what the general manager told me yesterday, so no, I don't think I will. Then my direct deposit for Tuesday's tips hit my bank, and guess what? I was short, and the money that they claimed was supposed to be my tip out and my actual net tip out were not what my checkout said it was supposed to be from the day before. And again, none of the managers could explain to me why, and I couldn't get corporate to give any answers either. Now, it was only 2 cents, so I wasn't really terribly concerned about any of that, but what did bother me is that the number they had for tips received didn't match the number for my checkout of the shift. It was off by a lot. When I showed this to my general manager, he said to me that's quite concerning, but that just didn't go any further. So after getting the runaround, I quit, because you know what? Screw that. The old system worked fine. I was never shorted or paid more than what I should have been paid. And then they switched, and instead of making sure there wouldn't be any issues before rolling it out, they just rolled it out anyways. Currently, there are 37 servers across 3 states having issues, and as far as I know, I'm the first one to quit. But I know for certain that the store I worked at is losing more servers, and I'm fairly certain that many more will follow suit. So let this be a lesson to you. It's your money that you worked very hard for. Do not let the company that you work for try to mess with it. And if they do and can't give you reasons as to why, you need to find another place to work, because this is shady business, and you do not need that in your life. Wow, the original poster has it 100% correct. These people were messing with this person's money, and they were literally giving them the runaround instead of giving them a solid answer as to why the money was wrong. Like, that literally is insane in my opinion, and there's no good excuse for that not being correct. Like, that's one of those things that needs to be right pretty much every time. Otherwise, the system, in my opinion, just falls apart. So good for you for standing your ground and saying, you know what, I don't need this. Because these people sound incredibly shady, and you definitely do not need that in your life. My entitled coworker intentionally spreads lies to everybody around the office, all because she was caught playing a mobile game game on her phone. Here's what happened. Okay, I have a very annoying colleague who we will call Melanie for the sake of the story. And trust me when I say this, me as well as the rest of the office can share 1,000 stories about her behavior. She was playing a mobile game with the sound on, and one other girl who we will call Valerie told her to put it on silent. Well, the first thing she did was scold Valerie for the times that she spoke to someone and Melanie got disturbed. Valerie then spoke to one of our other colleagues in her mother tongue. Now, they don't really do this when they are in a group, but when they are discussing something amongst each other, they prefer to use their native language. Well, this bothers Melanie too much because she comes to the office only to eavesdrop on everybody else, not to mention the fact that she severely is lagging behind in all of her work. Well, the next thing she does was tell everyone in the department, whoever is patient enough to listen to her, that Valerie has a problem with Melanie's message notifications, completely skipping out the part where she was playing a game on her phone. Then she caught me while I was having some tea. Surprisingly, or not really, she catches me on very specific days when she has something that she needs to tell me. This hasn't happened in a while, and I had a lot of work that day, so my guard was lower. Melanie then told me that Valerie was saying that I expose myself too much in the office and that my attire was inappropriate. Then she said that everyone in the department agrees. Now, most of the time, I ignore whatever comes out of Melanie's mouth, but due to too much stress, I immediately reported Valerie to my boss. For the record, I work at a university and mostly just wear crop tops and jeans or sometimes a sundress, which is very common in our department. The only difference is that I'm slightly curvy and I have a full head of frizzy curly hair, but no one in the department has ever made a comment, including my female boss. The boss was super supportive and told me that she'll take action against Valerie, but also suggested that I speak to her first. Now, I was not looking forward to that because Valerie is very much a junior to me and has always kept her distance. And you know what? I actually believe what Melanie said. Even though I knew that Melanie must have twisted something, I definitely believe that Valerie must have made at least a small comment about my attire. So I didn't say anything and I went home for an extended weekend. And when I came back, my head was clear and I used the time that I had in my hands. Well, I finally called Valerie near my desk in full view of Melanie. And that's when Valerie told me that she asked Melanie to turn her phone on silent, and since then she's been on a hate mission against her, spreading all kinds of lies about her. And once Valerie said that, we both watched as Melanie practically ran out of the office, not even stopping to put on her bag properly. I then updated my boss, and I heard from my colleagues that Melanie came to the office super early the next morning, all in some kind of desperate effort to do damage control with my boss. Wow, Melanie sounds like an awful coworker. She is quite literally spreading lies around the office, all because somebody caught her playing a game on her phone. Like seriously, is it that big of a deal where you have to ruin relationships in the office because of your stupidity? I'm honestly blown away that she even still has a job, because in my opinion, that is something that is completely unforgivable. And hopefully, in the future, you don't have to deal with her ever again. Am I the jerk for telling my cousin to stop holding a grudge at me over something that I did when I was 7 years old? Because right now, the way she's acting is completely unreasonable, and at this point, I don't know what to do. I'm a 17-year-old female, and I have a 30-year-old cousin who we will call Amanda, who's always been seen as the black sheep of our family. She's neurodivergent and has more of an alternative style. Think bright hair, tattoos, and some piercings. We were never close because of the age gap, but our families wanted to be close-knit. When my cousin turned 20 years old, her family decided to visit us and celebrate her birthday together. Well, here's the problem. I was 7 years old at the time, and I threw a temper tantrum. I wanted to go to a different restaurant than the one my cousin had picked out, and I made such a fuss that everyone ended up staying home. Later, when they got cake for my cousin, I insisted on blowing out the candles myself, and my parents let me do it because they didn't want to deal with another meltdown and told my cousin that she was too old to be making a fuss over her birthday anyways. Honestly, I don't remember much from that day, but apparently it really hurt my cousin. She wasn't even allowed to celebrate with her friends like she wanted to because she had to come on that family trip. Fast forward to now, and I'm applying to colleges, specifically in the state where my cousin lives. Over the years, I've come to realize just how toxic some of our family dynamics are, and I reached out to my cousin to apologize for what happened when I was a kid. I told her that I understand now, and I asked if she could help me navigate things as I apply to schools in the area. Well, my cousin pretty much brushed me off and told me that she's still upset about what happened on her 20th birthday. I tried to explain that I was just a kid at the time and that I'm sorry, but she's holding on to a grudge like it happened yesterday. I told her she needs to let it go, but she seems really stuck on it. My parents think that she's being unreasonable, but I'm starting to wonder if I'm being insensitive to her feelings. So I really need to know, am I the jerk for telling my cousin to stop holding onto a grudge over something that I did when I was 7 years old? old? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk. You're on the cusp of being an adult, and the fact that she wants to hold this against you, in my opinion, is insane. Because I don't know about you, but the way someone acts when they're 7 years old is not the same thing as when they're 17. Like, the original poster is quite literally a different person. So for your cousin to be like, no, I'm still bitter about my 20th birthday, like, that is really weird to me, and if anything, she should really direct that anger at the rest of her family and not at the child who was having a bad time. Because the way she's acting, in my opinion, is completely ridiculous. An entitled old jerk tries to get me fired from my job after he stalks me around my job and takes pictures of me using my phone while on the job. And despite the fact that this was a work phone that I was using on the job, this guy still was very convinced that I was goofing off and not doing what I needed to do. And I'm honestly still blown away by this guy's creepy behavior. Here's what happened. So for about a year now, I've worked at a storage facility. It's all outdoor floor level, and it's a huge place with over 1,500 units. And yes, we have to use a golf cart just to get around. The tiny office out front has one corded phone. And since before I started here, they have had an office iPhone that we can forward calls to from the office phone, so we can be anywhere on the property and take calls. The first thing they trained us on is don't leave the office without it. They also don't care at all if we have personal phones on and if we're using them. It can get really slow, so playing games and watching videos is perfectly okay. As long as we aren't doing it when people are in the office needing assistance, they really just don't care. So this older guy comes in and he asks me if I'm new. We have a short chat and he pays his bill a year in advance, so he hasn't really met me yet. So he pays, says he'll be in his unit all day arranging and pulling stuff, and honestly, that's no problem. But it's also important to remember that today there was a big issue getting worked on. 4 units we have cleared out due to water damage need to be photographed and inspected, and the manager is doing manager stuff with insurance, and the handyman is there to fix them. I just got the units moved out into another spot, so today I'm driving around to the old units and sending my manager the photos for insurance. And I go ahead and I forward the calls. I use the iPhone to take photos so that they are on the work cloud account, and so she can access them immediately. At the first unit, I call her on my personal cell phone to make sure the photos are good and see if she needs anything else, and to see if she's happy with any of the things that she's looking through. Once I was done, I hang up and I turn around to walk back to the golf cart, and this old man is literally standing directly behind me with this weird smile on his face as if he caught me doing something I shouldn't. He even had his arms folded like I did something wrong. Now this really scares me suddenly because I had no idea he was even around me at that moment, and I say to him, "Can I help you?" He then lets out a snide remark and says, "No, I don't think so," and then walks away. It was honestly so weird and very creepy. So I just went about with the rest of the units as necessary. I sit in the cart for about a minute until she's able to look through the photos and verify that I don't need to send anything else. I mean, I really didn't want to go back out and have to come back again if something was missing. She then calls and tells me everything looks great and that I can change the status of the units to unavailable in our system and just get back to my usual job. I then decide to tell her what happened too, and that the guy was really weird about it, and she was like, "Oh yeah, he's hardly ever here, and you won't need to deal with him much longer, but if you feel like he's off, you can just lock the door and put a sign up to call and just not interact with him." So you know what? That's exactly what I did. And thankfully, I didn't have to deal with him at all, but the very next day, things kinda go south. Now, we have one general inbox and everything goes there. We use our own personal signatures as we reply, but right then, I see an email from that guy. He literally sent an email directed to the inbox with photos and videos following me around the property, saying that he caught me sitting around and chatting using my cell phone, saying that I was taking photos of units with a cell phone on company time, and then further lies and says that when I got caught, I panicked and tried to tell him that I didn't have a cell phone on me. He made up this whole story like I was a school child caught with a forbidden phone in class. Like, why would I even do that in reality when it's the company phone I'm required to keep on me? Like, it was just so creepy. Even better though, I had my boss read it, and since I already spoke with her about the situation from his visit, she had to call him and explain it to him. And it was such a weird thing. Like, why didn't he bother asking about it instead of being like, "Oh, an employee on a cell phone? That's bad, let's tell on him." Like, I get there's probably some kind of generational difference here, and they just aren't used to cell phones being a necessity at the workplace, but the way he acted so snide, like he caught me being bad and just couldn't wait to tattle, was such a weird thing. And to top it all off, there's a lot of older people renting units. I've had them bring up the cell phone thing maybe once or twice, and even a few of them get upset because they're like, "Oh, you're just so dependent on them." But past all that, I've never seen anyone excited for the opportunity to use it for evil like this. And I honestly hope I never deal with this guy ever again. Yeah, that guy sounds super obnoxious. Like seriously, why would you be excited to try and get somebody in trouble? Like that sounds so obnoxious and just so annoying. Is his life seriously that boring that he has to follow somebody around to try and get him in trouble? Like doesn't he have a unit that he's trying to like work out or something like that? Like why would he be there? That is so creepy. And for me, the worst part about it is the fact that he was following you around without your knowledge. Like I don't care who you are, if someone's secretly following me around and like tracking my every move like that, especially in my place of like employment, like that is just crazy to me and there's no good excuse for that. Like just mind your own business and live your life, dude. You don't have to follow this person around. It's also ironic to me that anyone would be like, oh, you're just so dependent on those cell phones. And it's like, yeah, I need to do my job on the fly. If I don't have this phone with me, then I can't do exactly what I need to do. Like how is that hard for anybody to understand? Like I just don't get it. But I think the original poster did it right by telling their manager the day before, because this guy was clearly trying to get you in trouble. And that, in my opinion, is completely unfair. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My disabled mom is constantly insulting me while also expecting me to help her all the time. And after dealing with her attitude for most of my life, I find myself at a crossroads because I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was hoping for some advice on what's going on in my life. I'm a 21-year-old college student and I'm living at home and I'm not currently paying rent. I do not have a job and my mom in her 50s, first and foremost, is disabled. She is heavily obese and has a lot of health problems and physical pain that causes movement for her on most days to be really hard, and some days are worse than others. Now, the point of making this post is that as I grew up, my mom often insulted me. When she has gotten mad, she has called me many names and many curse words, and this has happened at least since I was 10 years old. I remember 2 big fights in the past 3 years, where in the first one, she felt like I didn't help her out enough with her disability, and she called me worthless, said that I was ungrateful, and threw things at my closed bedroom door from the adjacent room. The next fight was much more recent, only being this last year, and this all stems when I didn't take her advice of taking a fanny pack on a plane that I was going on. She called me a stupid idiot and a know-it-all, and many other names. She also physically blocked my way out of the room when I tried to leave, and slammed my door multiple times when I eventually made it back to my room. It eventually escalated to my dad defending me, and they argued with each other. That led to my mom telling me that the both of them would be getting a divorce because of me, and that this would make me happy, wouldn't it? However, despite all of this, she had gotten better over the last year. She hadn't insulted me at all, and hadn't gotten mad at me to that degree anymore. Our relationship improved, and I even sought her out for comfort when I was having a depressive episode the other week. But as I previously mentioned, I don't have a job as I'm struggling to find one. I've been actively applying for months, and the farthest I've gotten were some interviews, but I haven't been successful at all. It's been really demoralizing. So a couple of weeks ago, I overheard her telling her friend that I was not trying hard enough to get a job, and that if I wanted to be treated like an adult, I should get a job like a normal adult. And her saying that just brought everything back. So I've been avoiding her as much as I can while living in the same house, as I try to deal with the feelings it gave me. But the problem is that she's noticed, as she often comes to me for help with chores and household stuff, like making dinner or even cleaning up. She's getting more mad at me because of me avoiding her, and my dad this time agrees with her that I should be helping her more on account of her disability, stating that she loves me and just because I'm pissed off doesn't mean that I shouldn't help her out. But I don't understand why I should help her when she says these things about me. Then also, I don't know what to do, as I can't just move out on the spot. I don't have a job, and I've had a lot of trouble finding one. The only good thing is that my dad refuses to make me pay rent, while my mom wants me to do that. I don't know what to do, and I don't know why I should help her, and I just don't know how much I can take living with her if she starts insulting me all over again. I'm honestly scared of this situation because I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, for starters, I think you really do need to get a job, but not for the reasons you might be thinking. You don't need a job to make your mom happy. You need a job so you can save up and move out of that house. If I was in your shoes, that would be the only thought in my head. Save up my money in my bank account, develop a game plan for what I'm gonna do when I move out, and then find a place and get out of there. Like what you're describing sounds awful. Your mom is guilt-tripping you into helping her with all this stuff, and yes, she does have a disability, but last I checked you are not her caretaker. Like that is ridiculous. And in my opinion, you should not be obligated to help her out in that kind of way constantly. Sure, you can do your chores and help out around the house, but from the sounds of it, it seems like this is going to be a much more involved role in your life. So in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would be making a plan to get out of there, because I can guarantee you if you don't get a job and and find some kind of money in your bank account, you're gonna look up one day and it's gonna be 5 years later and you're still gonna be dealing with this woman. And in my opinion, I think it's better to get things going now instead of waiting around until it's way too late. My coworker got mad at me when I caught him stealing my tips, and even went as far as cussing me out when we were clocking out that day. And now, after telling my managers everything, I have my fingers crossed that this guy won't have a job anytime soon, because working with him quite literally is an absolute nightmare. Here's what happened. So for a bit of context, I work at a small town pizza place, and each final bill is usually somewhere between $20 to $40, so the tips aren't always amazing, but they are still something, so we'll take it. Overall, I like my job and the people I work with. That is, with the exception of this one guy who we will call Caleb. On his very first day a few weeks ago, Caleb came in high out of his mind and ended up getting sent home. And you know what? Everyone has some bad days, so whatever. But the least he can do is come in able to work on his first day. He's training to serve, and I was working with him and the trainer this past Monday. I had a table of a few of my regulars who always leave me a $5 bill. I said my usual have a good night and all that, and I watched them put in the little bill sleeve and walked off to attend another table. Well, I come back and I start bussing after they leave, and the tip is gone. I immediately tell the manager that someone took my tip, and he goes to ask Caleb if he saw anything. Well, Caleb, without saying a word, pulls the $5 bill from his apron and hands it to the manager with a scowl. I mean, the audacity itself was one thing, but I was just glad to have the money back, so I ignored it, and I was then just more diligent about watching my tables for the rest of the night. Later on, right before I clocked out, Caleb comes up to me, and while walking past me, he says to me, "You know, you didn't have to say anything, you jerk." Only trust me, he didn't say jerk. And I thought to myself, you have got to be kidding me. I then told the manager again, because I am not one to deal with that at all. Anyways, he called out 2 days ago to say that his phone was broken so he couldn't come to work. And then he called out today saying that he forgot and had plans. And honestly, I hope my managers do something about this, because working with this guy is an absolute nightmare. Wow, I can't believe this guy still has a job after stealing your tips. Never mind the fact that he called you a horrible curse word when you called him out for it, or the fact that he's coming to work high. Like, all of that is kind of secondary in my opinion, because this guy straight up stole from you. He stole your money and tried to take it without you knowing about it. And that, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate. Like, that is not okay. You can't do that to somebody. Like, why on earth would a manager be like, "Oh, you stole some money? Okay, it's time for you to go." So truly, I hope for your sake you don't have to deal with Caleb anytime soon either, because what you described sounds incredibly annoying. Am I the jerk for donating my son's entire toy collection to charity after he refused to clean his room? Here's what happened. I'm a 38-year-old male, and I have a 10-year-old son who has been struggling with keeping his room clean. I've asked him repeatedly to tidy up, and every time I end up doing it myself or giving him a reminder. Well, last week, after another round of nagging and zero results, I decided to take a more drastic approach. I told my son that if he didn't clean his room by the end of the week, I would donate his toys to charity. And of course, he didn't take me seriously and continued to leave his room in a mess. Well, when the deadline passed, I followed through and donated his entire toy collection to a local children's charity. My son was absolutely devastated when he found out. He cried and begged me to get the toys back, but I explained that the toys were already gone and that he should learn a lesson about responsibility. My wife is furious with me and says I was too harsh. She argues that it was unnecessary to donate all of his toys and that he should have been given another chance. I understand my wife's point, but I also think that Jamie needed a wake-up call. He's been getting away with ignoring chores for too long, and I wanted to show him that there are real consequences for his actions. Plus, the charity will benefit from the toys, and other kids will get joy from them. But now, my wife is considering talking to a family therapist about this, and my son is obviously upset, and I'm beginning to wonder if I was too extreme. So am I the jerk for donating my son's toys? What should I do? Yes, 100%, you are absolutely the jerk. Instead of taking his toys away and keeping them so that he has to like earn them back or something like that, you decided to take this to the extreme and be like, okay, I'm donating it to charity. You do know your son is 10 years old, right? Like seriously, this is a 10-year-old we're talking about. This is a literal child. And instead of trying to teach him a lesson in a reasonable way, you went the completely irrational route and probably scarred this kid for life. Like seriously, what is wrong with you? That is such a weird way to try and teach someone a lesson. And your justification for it is just insane in my opinion. You're trying to be like, oh, well, he needs to learn from his consequences. Plus the charity's gonna benefit from the toys. Like, do you just hate your son or something like that? Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, I can understand him not doing his chores or not tidying up when he's supposed to, but doing something like this is so extreme it's not even funny. You got rid of something that meant a lot to him just to try and prove some weird point that you wanted to make. Like, your wife is absolutely right in thinking, okay, we need a therapist for our kid because he is destroyed right now. Also, fun fact, what you did is completely irreversible. He will never get those toys back ever, and I guarantee you he will remember this for the rest of his life. So yes, you are absolutely the jerk, and the way that you escalated to such a dramatic degree, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. I bought a PC that my awful professor owned that had files on it that he demanded I delete. So I maliciously complied by deleting the files immediately, only to then find out that he desperately needed them, as that was the only copy he ever made. Here's what happened. While I was studying at university, I crossed paths with a hostile professor, who we will call Professor Nasty, who absolutely did not want to be questioned about anything during class. He would say, "Oh, you're being disruptive. I'm a researcher with a PhD. You're wasting my time. Just study harder." And there were more, but honestly, these were the highlights. Well, one day I missed a lecture, so just before the class started, I asked him if I might have a copy of his lecture notes from the class that I had missed. Well, when I said that, he blew up at me. He slammed his papers down and started ripping me a new one, saying that if I was not serious about his class, then I shouldn't be in it and that I should just drop it. This went on for about 5 minutes into the class, and nobody else said a word, and the class just continued. Now, fast forward, and for reference, the university had a surplus barn where unneeded equipment was sold at bulk rates. I got there first thing in the morning, and I spotted a pallet with a bunch of computer junk on it. For about $50, I ended up with a dot matrix printer, a few modems, and an extended technology PC, as well as a monitor and a keyboard setup. And of course, I also got a receipt. Now, my place wasn't far, so I borrowed a wheelbarrow, and I brought it all home in 2 trips. The printer was beyond repair. Only 2 of the modems still worked, but the PC system booted up on the first try. I looked through the directory, and I saw what looked like drafts of research paper and a whole lot of data files as well. And wouldn't you guess it, the hard drive's volume name was the same as Professor Nasty. So I rang up his office. His secretary, who was a sweet grandmotherly type of woman, answered the phone, and I explained what I had found. She asked me to hold, and a minute or two later, Professor Nasty himself was on the line, telling me to get those files off the computer right now. So I decided to maliciously comply. I did this right away, and I deleted all the data and the document files. Then I overwrote the empty drive space with a huge file full of random bytes of data. Then I deleted that file, and I repeated the process 6 more times. Then I reformatted the drive with a new operating system. The PC booted up right away to the DOS prompt, and I was happy with my new PC. Well, this is when some fallout really started to take place. At the next class session, Professor Nasty greeted me by my name and politely asked if I removed the files from my computer yet. I looked at him and I said, "Oh, of course, sir. I removed those files from my computer just like you told me to." "Why? Were they important?" Well, apparently they were. He told me how important the files were and that they had something to do with 2 to 3 years of research data for a corporate-backed project. But I said to him, "I'm sorry, sir, but you told me to get rid of those files off of my computer, so that's what I did. And your secretary and anyone else listening in will verify that. Those files are gone, and there's nothing anyone could do about it." Well, Professor Nasty had to default on his project, which looked really bad for his department and the university as well. Now, the rumors suggested that he had made no backups because he feared plagiarism. And I also had a few discussions with the dean and some others about all of this, but it all came back to Professor Nasty's own carelessness. I finished the class and I got a decent grade, and thankfully, I never saw him ever again. Yeah, that professor's not only really stupid, but he also absolutely had that coming. Like, seriously, all he has to do is be a decent person and all of this could have been avoided. Or if he was better at his job, he could have made a backup plan and had some kind of backup file he could go to. Why on earth would you not secure those files before you give up your PC? So yeah, this guy is a complete moron, and based on his attitude, he absolutely deserved the backlash that I'm sure he received. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my sister-in-law babysit my baby after she's made some sketchy remarks in the past about childcare? Here's what happened. Okay, so my husband and I had to be somewhere for our older child, so we asked my mother-in-law if she could watch our 3-month-old son for a few hours. She said of course, but unfortunately when we went to drop him off, she wasn't home, and one of my husband's sisters, who we will call Jane, was there instead. For reference, Jane is 21 years old. Apparently my mother-in-law wasn't going to be home for a bit, so Jane agreed to watch our son for some time. Well, I immediately said no, because Jane believes that babies don't feel anything. She thinks that they cry for no reason, and we shouldn't respond to their cries ever for whatever reason, and that not responding won't have any effect on them. She thinks that anything we do to babies during this period of their lives will have absolutely zero effect on them in the future, and she often calls them of mindless as well. My husband called his mom and we politely explained our concerns and then hung up because we were extremely busy already. Now, I figured that was it until Jane came over extremely upset and in tears, insisting that she's not a bad person and that she would never do anything to hurt any kid. She then accused me of discriminating against her because she doesn't want or even have kids like everyone else in the family, but I told her straight up that I don't care if she wants kids of her own, and I said that I don't like her thoughts on how to care for babies specifically. And instead of trying to understand me, she doubled down and said that her way of dealing with babies makes sense and that I'm wrong and I'm just extremely sensitive in nature, so of course I don't get it. She then kept arguing with me about how to take care of my baby, so I just asked her to leave and she blew up on me. My husband even told her to calm down and that it's not like we're preventing her from seeing our kids all together, but she just said, "Okay, screw you and your stupid kids," and then she left in a rage. But despite all that's happened, my mother-in-law is really annoyed with me because apparently Jane is still very upset, and I'm just wondering if I'm the jerk here. Like, I don't think I am, especially since no one lets her babysit for the same reasons, but I'm just the first person to actually say no to her face, as well as tell her why instead of making up an excuse. Was I being too harsh? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all because that is some very concerning behavior. That is an immediate red flag, and it's proof to me why no one else would want her to babysit any kid. If she really would never hurt a kid for any reason, then why does she advertise herself as someone who could let that happen? Like, she very clearly just doesn't care, and if anything, she would be very apathetic if something went down. So no, I don't blame you in the slightest for saying, "No, you're not watching my baby," because Jane's behavior, in my opinion, is incredibly concerning. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.